Chapter 349. What appeared outside Gohan's car window was a chase. On one side was a running cheetah, and on the other side were two sword-bearers who were running for their lives. Behind the two sword-bearers were two sword maidens who were attacking the cheetah, trying to slow it down. However, the cheetah looked very strange. It did not have the texture of a normal cheetah's fur. On the contrary, it had a waxy metallic feel to it. It did not look like an animal, but more like a shiny car that had been waxed. Gohan, the two sword-bearers are in danger. We have to save them. Song Yifei saw the two sword-bearers running for their lives, and immediately stood up, eager to save them. All right, I'll go find Lord Eagle Cat right now. Gohan nodded. Helping each other was the rule of all sword-bearers. Once they saw their companions in danger, they had to draw their swords to help. Although this was not a mandatory rule, on the contrary, it was stated in the rule that if there was a huge disparity in strength between two parties, they could ignore the sword-bearers who were running for their lives, and protect their own lives. However, in some cases, the sword-bearers would ignore this rule and draw their swords to help. Only when you help others today will others help you at other times. Whoosh! The hovering bus suddenly stopped in the next second. It seemed like the Eagle Cat sword spirit had also discovered their companions in danger. Even though the Eagle Cat sword spirit was not in a good mood, he was not someone who did not know the severity of the situation when it came to the safety of his companions. The three of you go down with the two sword-bearers and kill that Yuan Ko. The Eagle Cat did not show his face, but his voice was broadcasted throughout the entire bus. At the same time, the front and back doors opened simultaneously. Gohan and Song Yifei looked at each other, and Ming Yuan, Yi Tian, Qin Pin, and Hanya, who were in the room, each turned into a ray of light and flew into Gohan and Song Yifei's scabbards. Then, the two of them jumped down from the bus door, and faced the two sword-bearers who were running for their lives. At this time, the distance between the two parties was about 1 kilometer. Before the apocalypse, the world record for running 1 kilometer was set by an African with a time of 2 minutes and 11 seconds. Before the apocalypse, the world record for running 1 kilometer was about 0.2 seconds. This was set by the sky swimmer Jiendi, and he had indeed completed this 1 kilometer by running. If he did not run, but used the ability to travel through space or the void, then time would be meaningless. To Jiendi, 1 kilometer or 1 kilometer would take the same amount of time. However, Gohan and Song Yifei did not have the ability to cross the void, so they could only use the traditional method of running to get close to the two fugitives. With the physical attributes of the sword ladies, this time was shortened to about 50 seconds. 50 seconds sounded very short, perhaps not even enough time to read a page of a novel, but 50 seconds was very long enough for Yuan Yen to kill an unlucky sword wielder in front of Gohan. In Yi Wenjun's memory, today was probably his most unlucky and tragic day. As he was patrolling the beacon tower, he suddenly realized that a dimensional rift was forming not far from the beacon tower. Then, an agile leopard jumped out of this dimensional rift. Tiger-grade Yuan Ko, gold-patterned leopard. This was the Yuan Ko that Yi Wenjun's personal terminal had provided after scanning this leopard. This allowed the treasure-grade Yi Wenjun to completely relax and immediately decide to kill this unlucky tiger-grade Yuan Ko. What a joke! Although Yi Wenjun did not have a great reputation among the treasure-grade sword-bearers, he was still a treasure-grade sword-bearer. Dealing with the tiger-grade Yuan Ko, who was 1 grade higher than him, was still a piece of cake. Moreover, Yi Wenjun had another ancient sword-bearer by his side. It was too easy for 2 sword-bearers to kill a tiger-grade Yuan Ko. Indeed, a treasure-grade sword-bearer and an ancient sword-bearer could easily kill an unlucky tiger-grade Yuan Ko. But the problem was, what if this Yuan Ko was not tiger-grade? What if the personal terminal's information was wrong? Unfortunately, all of these things happened. In the actual battle, this gold-patterned leopard's strength had exceeded Yi Wenjun's and his companions' estimations. In less than 20 seconds, Yi Wenjun's treasure-grade sword lady's shield had been torn apart by the gold-patterned leopard's claws. Had Yi Wenjun not retrieved it in time, his treasure-grade sword lady would have been broken on the spot. Sure enough, when Yi Wenjun put his sword back into his hand, he found that the blade was covered in cracks. These cracks extended from the tip of the sword all the way up to the hilt. If these cracks had successfully extended to the hilt, then this treasure-grade sword lady would have been broken and died at the hands of Yuan Ko. Therefore, it could be said that he was lucky to be able to retrieve his sword, Maiden, in time. But here came the problem. If even a treasure-grade sword lady was almost torn to pieces by this Yuan Ko in less than a minute, then what was this Yuan Ko's level? Or to put it more realistically, without the treasure-grade sword lady, how could Yi Wenjun deal with this unknown-level Yuan Ko? Yi Wenjun's answer was very simple, and that was to run. He ran as fast as he could. He wanted to escape to another nearby beacon and meet up with the sword-bearers there. He wanted to borrow the defensive power of the beacon to defend against this terrifying Yuan Ko. Yi Wenjun ran with all his might. However, the distance between each beacon was 20 kilometers. Even if he ran at full speed, it would take him around 20 minutes to reach the next beacon. That Yuan Ko would not give Yi Wenjun 20 minutes to escape. After discovering Yi Wenjun's tracks, it immediately chased after Yi Wenjun and his companions. The distance between the two sides continued to decrease. Although Yi Wenjun and the other sword-bearer had sent out their own ancient sword-grade sword ladies and ordered them to use all sorts of methods to slow down the leopard Yuan Ko, the leopard did not care about the sword ladies' attacks at all. It only continued to chase after Yi Wenjun. The attacks of the ancient sword-grade sword ladies did not seem to cause any damage to the leopard's body. In just a few seconds, the distance between the two had shortened from 600 to 700 meters to less than 50 meters. Yi Wenjun could even breathe in the smell of the bloody mouth behind her that was filled with the smell of engine oil. Wait, why did the bloody mouth smell like engine oil? Well, that was not the point. At this time, Yi Wenjun's mentality could be said to be almost the mentality of waiting for death. His physical strength was already beginning to weaken. With every step he took, there was a repulsive smell of blood in his throat. If he continued to run, Yi Wenjun reckoned that he would vomit blood. The sword-bearer beside Yi Wenjun immediately cheered him on. "Young master, pull yourself together. The hope of our family rests on you." Unlike the youthful Yi Wenjun, who was around 20 years old, this sword-bearer, who called Yi Wenjun young master, looked to be in his 60s or 70s. His face was full of wrinkles and his skin was dry and old. He looked like he did not have long to live. To be an ancient sword-grade sword-bearer at the age of 67 was not surprising. More than 80% of ancient sword-grade sword-bearers would be stuck at the ancient sword grade for the rest of their lives. However, this Yi Wenjun was actually a young master. It seemed like this old sword-bearer was Yi Wenjun's retainer. Yi Wenjun didn't know which family's young master he was from to be in such dire straits. "Uncle Huang, you run first." "I can't run anymore, I can't run anymore," Yi Wenjun said, panting heavily. His heart was filled with sorrow, and he wanted to give up. He, Yi Wenjun, was a descendant of a prestigious family. If he lived such a useless life, he might as well die. "Young master, you can't give up, young master. You have to at least leave a descendant of the Yi family before you die," Uncle Huang said sincerely. He did not know that this only made Yi Wenjun feel even more sorrowful. In Uncle Huang's eyes, Yi Wenjun's greatest value was to leave a descendant of the Yi family. Just as Yi Wenjun was about to give up, an angel-like bus appeared in front of them. "Young master, we're saved. Young master, this is Yuzhong City's hover bus. There must be a sword-bearer inside. We're saved, young master." Uncle Huang said excitedly, "Young master, let's run faster. Once we reach the bus, we'll live." When there was no hope, humans were the most prone to despair. But once they saw a glimmer of hope, they could unleash their unparalleled potential. Under the illumination of the light that represented life, Wenjun's running speed suddenly increased by 20% to 30%. When they found that the bus had stopped, and two people jumped out of it and ran towards them, they became even more excited and ran even faster. But at this time, the leopard was already less than 5 meters away from Wenjun's back. The leopard opened its bloody mouth and suddenly leaped up, landing on top of Wenjun's head. Wenjun felt someone push him from the back. He lost his balance and fell to the ground. Then, Wenjun let out a blood-curdling scream, because his shoulder blades were directly pierced by a pair of sharp claws. Waves of intense pain struck Wenjun's brain, causing him to howl uncontrollably. "Don't touch my young master! I'll kill you!" Uncle Huang, who could have chosen to escape, ran back without hesitation. He pounced on the leopard with his body, intending to exchange his life for Wenjun's. Roar! The leopard roared and whipped its tail at Uncle Huang's chest, sending him flying more than 10 meters away. His ribs were broken in an instant. Uncle Huang had lost his ability to fight with just a whip of the leopard's tail. Then, one of the leopard's claws clamped onto Wenjun's throat. As long as the leopard squeezed slightly, Wenjun's throat would be slit. In less than 10 seconds, he would die from excessive blood loss, or die from having his head cut off. Chapter 350. Not good, it's too late to save the sword wielder. Song Yifei exclaimed. Although she was running with all her might, she was still more than 10 seconds away from the sword wielder. At this distance, she would not be able to save the other party no matter what. If I use the 9 swords of mysterious heaven. Gohan was hesitant. If he used the sword chi of the 9 swords of mysterious heaven, Gohan was confident that he could chase the leopard off the sword wielder and save the other party. However, if Gohan used the 9 swords of mysterious heaven, his identity as the military governor might be exposed. In that battle, the military governor's invincible sword chi had shocked everyone. Almost any player who had paid attention to the military governor would think of the military governor as soon as they saw the sword chi of the 9 swords of mysterious heaven. Song Yifei seemed to have mentioned that she was very interested in the military governor. If Song Yifei recognized the origin of the sword chi, it would be terrible. However, if Gohan held back the sword chi and did not use it, then he would just be watching the sword wielder be killed by Yuan Ko. Fine, compared to a human life, my identity as the military governor is nothing. Gohan made up his mind. He pulled out the heavenly sword and was about to release the sword chi of the 9 swords of mysterious heaven, sword of the abyss, to save Wenjun from danger. In the blink of an eye, just as Gohan was about to release his sword chi, Gohan's hair stood on end. He could feel a powerful force surging out from behind him like a violent storm. This is the power of a spirit sword maiden. A spirit sword maiden has made her move. Feeling this power, Gohan breathed a sigh of relief and instantly gave up on the idea of using the sword of the abyss. Gohan had almost forgotten that there was a spirit sword maiden behind him. At this time, it was obvious that he and the others would not be able to save the sword wielder in time, so the eagle cat sword spirit could only save the life of the sword wielder himself. As mentioned before, the wielder of the sword would never leave his comrade to die. A meteor-like light flashed, and the leopard that was on top of Wenjun was smashed hundreds of meters away, then fell heavily on the ground. Seizing this opportunity, Gohan and Song Yifei finally rushed to Wenjun and helped him up from the ground. "Thank you. Thank you." Wenjun was so excited or scared that she couldn't even speak clearly. Her lips kept trembling. Just now, when the leopard had gripped his neck, Wenjun had truly felt the call of death. He had already closed his eyes, preparing to helplessly accept death. Who would have thought that at this critical moment, there would be someone who would send the leopard flying and save their lives? "Thank you, Your Highness." Wenjun glanced at the sky. In the sky, there was a purple figure quietly floating in the sky. Except for a very small number of special cases, sword maidens who could float in the air were basically spirit sword maidens and above. If this sword maiden in purple could float in the air, didn't that mean that the person who saved him just now was a spirit sword maiden? Thinking of this, Iwenjun's heart couldn't help but be excited. With a spirit sword maiden here, this damn Yuan Ko was definitely going to die. Didn't he see that just now, this spirit sword level sword maiden casually smashed Yuan Zhen and sent him flying hundreds of meters away? This was a completely crushing power. My friend said that this is your battle. Unless you are going to die in the next second, I can't do anything. The sword maiden in the sky suddenly opened her mouth. Although her voice was pleasant, there was a kind of mechanical feeling in it. It seemed that this sword maiden was also a man-made sword maiden. How could I be a match for this Yuan Ko? Hearing the words of the sword maiden, Iwenjun couldn't help but refute. The tragic scene just now had left a deep impression on him, and fear seemed to have seeped into his bones. It's too strong, too strong. My separate and gather sword was destroyed in less than 20 seconds. I'm not its match, I can't be its match. You need to calm down. People who aren't calm aren't worthy of being a sword maiden. Guhan took out a hemostatic medicine from his dimensional pocket and sprinkled it on the wound on Iwenjun's shoulder. The bleeding wound began to stop at a speed visible to the naked eye. Go take care of your companion. Remember to carry him into the medical chamber and leave him to us. Guhan found that this sword maiden's face was pale and his eyes were lifeless. Plus, he said that his separate and gather sword had been destroyed. Guhan had basically confirmed that this artifact sword tier sword wielder was already crippled. There was no use for him to stay here, and he might even become a burden. Thus, Guhan simply rushed Iwenjun to take care of the injured Uncle Huang. Uncle Huang had 8 broken ribs, and he had to be carried into the medical bay immediately. If the broken ribs damaged any of his internal organs, he would die. Okay. Yes. Iwenjun ran to Uncle Huang's side like a frightened mouse. He took out his medical chamber and carried Uncle Huang in. This young master seemed to have never served anyone before. The way he carried Uncle Huang was barbaric and forceful, causing the old man to cry out in pain. It couldn't be helped, as Iwenjun's broken ribs had stabbed into Uncle Huang's organs. When Iwenjun finally carried Uncle Huang into the medical chamber, he raised his head to look at the other side of the battlefield. He saw that the detestable leopard, Yuan Ko, was facing off against 2 sword maidens. Isn't that Lady Etian? Iwenjun let out a cry of surprise. This guy actually recognized Guhan's sword lady Etian at a glance. Etian had not appeared for 350 years, and there were not many sword bearers in this world who could recognize Etian's appearance at a glance. At this moment Guhan was facing off against the leopard. After the leopard was sent flying by the spirit sword maiden, it quickly got up from the ground. However, there was a hint of fear in its eyes. It was afraid of the sword maiden floating in the sky. Its sixth sense was not bad, and it could accurately sense who was the biggest threat to it. In other words, it was an enemy that it could not deal with at all. If this leopard had intelligence and was smart enough, it should have turned around and run as far as it could. However, it was not smart enough. It desperately wanted to kill these humans. Thus, the 2 sides were in a standoff. Guhan stood in place, thinking about something. Meanwhile, Leopard Yuan Ko adopted a provocative posture and kept baring its teeth at Guhan to provoke him. However, it was afraid of the power of the spirit sword maiden and did not dare to make a move. If this beast doesn't make a move, are you guys going to keep waiting here? The eagle cat sword spirit's voice exploded in Guhan and Song Yifei's ears at the same time. It seemed that the eagle cat sword spirit was very impatient with this standoff. Etian, do it! Mingyuan, do it! Guhan and Song Yifei looked at each other. In front of them, Etian and Mingyuan charged towards the yellow leopard at the same time. Mingyuan, how about we compete again today? Etian's battle-intent sword. Let's compete and see who can give this leopard a fatal blow. You talk too much. Ming Yuan sneered, but she took a step forward and stood in front of the heavenly sword, using her own actions to answer. Awo! Seeing that its opponent had taken the initiative to attack, the leopard no longer cared about the spirit sword Maiden floating in the sky. In an instant the two sides clashed. After exchanging dozens of blows, there was no clear winner for a while. What the hell is this Yuan Ko? Why is its body as hard as steel? Etion's sword smashed into the leopard's body, causing sparks to fill the sky. This was a phenomenon that would only happen when metal collided with metal. This leopard's body seemed to be completely made out of metal. Its magic resistance is also pretty strong. Beads of sweat appeared on Ming Yuan's forehead. Ming Yuan was a killing path swordmistress, but she was a rare killing path swordmistress that used magic. More than 10 deathfire bullets smashed into the leopard's body, but not a single burn mark was left. This meant that this leopard also had an extremely high magic resistance. Guhan, is this really a tiger-level Yuan Ko golden pattern leopard? Song Yifei also opened his personal terminal and scanned the leopard's image. The result the personal terminal gave was the same as Yi Wenjun's. Both said that this leopard was a golden patterned leopard, a weak tiger-level Yuan Ko. Stop looking. The personal terminal's illustrated handbook isn't completely reliable. Once it meets a never-before-seen Yuan Ko, the handbook will give the closest answer. Although it's out of good intentions, sometimes it can kill people. Guhan pointed out a huge drawback of the handbook. When facing a never-before-seen Yuan Ko, the handbook would think itself clever and give the closest answer. Most of the time, these close answers were useful, but sometimes, such answers could cost people their lives. For example, Yi Wenjun, if the handbook hadn't told him that this was a tiger-level Yuan Ko, he definitely wouldn't have been so excited to go and reap Yuan Ko's life. So that's how it is. No wonder this Yuan Ko is so powerful. Even Heaven Reliance and Ming Yuan aren't its match. At this time, Heaven Reliance and Ming Yuan had already been fighting the leopard for 5 to 6 minutes. Although the treasured swords in their hands were constantly attacking the leopard's body, this leopard didn't show any signs of weakening. On the contrary, it seemed to be getting more and more courageous as it fought. It was actually gradually suppressing Heaven Reliance and Ming Yuan. There was no need to talk about Ming Yuan, who was ranked 100th, but Heaven Reliance was ranked first in treasured swords and third in famed sword. Yet, it was actually being suppressed by a leopard. This leopard's true level was very high. Damn it, I only have 2/3 of my sword essence left. Sword maidens needed to borrow the sword essence from the wielder's body to attack. The intense battle just now had already used up 2/3 of Song Yifei's sword essence. It wouldn't be a big deal if it was effective, but that Yuan Ko didn't seem to be injured at all. Just what level is this Yuan Ko? Song Yifei gritted his teeth. And that Ku Rock-in, why hasn't he come out to fight yet? This leopard is a Yuan Ko that has never appeared before, right? At the very least, it has the strength of a dragon-level Yuan Ko. We should be able to get some clues as to what kind of trash the two sword immortals are recommending. The eagle cat sword spirit, who was hovering in the bus, silently watched the battle in the distance. He was filled with anticipation to find out exactly how strong Guhan and Song Yifei were. As for Ku Rock-in, the eagle cat sword spirit didn't know how to deal with him. He was a sour and stubborn old fox. Chapter 351 F***CK. This heroine is about to die of depression. Indeed, just like what Etion said, she was about to die of depression. This damned Yuan Ko was at least at the level of a dragon-level Yuan Ko. Etion's attacks couldn't even break through the defense of this Yuan Ko. All she could do was continuously strike sparks on the opponent's body. If it wasn't for Etion's outstanding movement technique, this leopard's claws wouldn't be able to touch Etion's body. Etion's shield would have been broken long ago. Etion, calm down. Every Yuan puppet has its own weakness. You have to find it. Gu Han, who was commanding the Yuan puppet through the sword mark, said calmly. It's easy for you to say that. Why don't you find this heroine's weakness? Tian snappily replied to Gohan. I've even stabbed this thing's buttocks a few times. Where else do you want me to find its weakness? Alright, it seemed that Tian was really going all out. Since she was forced to stab Yuan Ko's buttocks, it seemed that this Yuan Ko's weakness was really easy to find. It would be great if I could find out this Yuan Ko's true origin. Gohan silently pondered. As long as he could find out this Yuan Ko's origin, he might be able to find this Yuan Ko's weakness. Unfortunately, his personal terminal still gave him the answer that it was a golden patterned leopard. If Tian could still contend with this Yuan Ko because of her sword technique and movement technique, then on the other side, Ming Yuan's situation wasn't so good. She was a mage-type sword maiden. Her physical fitness was originally not as good as Tian's. After fighting with this Yuan Ko for a while, this Yuan Ko naturally discovered that Ming Yuan was a soft persimmon that was easy to bully. As a result, Yuan Ko relied on his defensive abilities to ignore Heavenly Reliance's attacks and focus all of his power on Ming Yuan. This caused Ming Yuan to be flustered. Although Ming Yuan's swordsmanship wasn't bad, she couldn't completely dodge Yuan Ko's attacks like the Heavenly Sword. In just over a minute, she had taken quite a few of the leopard's attacks. After swaying for a while, her shield had lost about 20% of its energy. As a matter of fact, if it wasn't for Tian's help from time to time, Ming Yuan might have suffered even more damage. Smelly blackbird, get the hell back to where you belong, where you used to be. You're a long-range sword maiden, yet you're running over here to fight in close combat. What do you think you're doing? Seeing that Ming Yuan had suffered quite a bit of damage, Tian was somewhat irritated and distressed. It was hard to tell that although Tian and Ming Yuan were used to bickering, fighting, and competing with each other, their relationship was unexpectedly good. With Tian's stinky personality, it was really strange that he had friends. However, some interesting information could be gleaned from their conversation. For example, Tian and Ming Yuan had actually been teammates in the past, and had even fought together in the past. Just like a six-man party in a dungeon, they each had their own positions. Help me stall for a while. I'll treat that damned Yuan Ko to a meal of leopard meat barbecue. Ming Yuan hesitated for a moment. She was somewhat helpless, but also somewhat excited, as she accepted Tian's suggestion. She took a few steps back, maintaining a distance of a dozen or so meters from Yuan Ko. Then, she pointed her sword towards the sky and muttered something. She looked like a Taoist priest preparing to cast a spell to exorcise a ghost. The only difference was that the Taoist priest's peach-wood swords were burning with talismans, whereas the Netherworld Iris sword's blade was burning with a pitch-black flame. The flame was so black that it seemed as though it could devour all the light in the surroundings. What skill is that? Gohan didn't know much about Ming Yuan's sword, so he didn't know what kind of skill it was going to use. However, judging from Ming Yuan's posture and the 10 seconds of channeling time, Gohan knew that Ming Yuan was about to unleash her ultimate skill. Sure enough, Song Yifei said with a serious expression, "This is Ming Yuan's ultimate skill, Soul Ignition with Netherfire. It can only be used when using a large amount of sword chi and when the durability of the user's body is greatly reduced. It can summon a ball of netherfire that can cause indefensible damage to Yuan Ko's body and attack Yuan Ko. It's a very powerful skill. My master once said that Ming Yuan Jiandi used this skill to defeat all the Ghost class and Soul class Yuan Ko. He even used this skill to kill the Dragon class Yuan Ko. That's why Ming Yuan Jiandi is so grateful to Ming Yuan that he even used Ming Yuan's sword as his title. You don't have to tell me so much about it." Gohan rolled his eyes at Song Yifei. Even swordsmen wouldn't tell each other the details of their sword maiden's skills unless it was a special occasion. Even if swordsmen had a surprising level of trust and friendship between each other, they wouldn't tell anyone else about their sword maiden skills. It was just like how a husband and wife, or a father and son, had their own secret. The fact that Song Yifei was able to tell Gohan everything about Ming Yuan meant that Ming Yuan viewed Gohan as a trustworthy friend. How strong is the Ming Yuan sword? Gohan changed the topic. I don't know how strong it is, because it's my first time seeing Ming Yuan use this skill. Normally, I would ask Ming Yuan to show me this move so that I could have a better understanding of her power. However, Ming Yuan wouldn't agree. She said that this is a skill that can't be used in battle. Song Yifei stared at Ming Yuan as she spoke. It was clear that she had never seen Ming Yuan use this skill before. She was also very curious about Ming Yuan's ultimate skill. A skill that even swordsmen don't know how strong it is? Gohan turned his attention back to the netherworld kite sword. The leopard seemed to have sensed something, and was desperately trying to attack the netherworld kite sword. However, the heavenly sword was like a sticky candy that couldn't be shaken off, sticking to Yuan Ko's side. The leopard couldn't get close to Ming Yuan at all. Hey, Ming Yuan, how much longer do you need? This guy is about to break through. The heavenly sword slashed again, forcing Yuan Yen, who was trying to break through the heavenly sword's defensive line, back. However, Yuan Ko relied on his high defense to break through the heavenly sword with brute force. He was only a few meters away from Ming Yuan. Very good. Soon. Now! A black light flashed in Ming Yuan's eyes. The black flame on the Ming Yuan sword rapidly grew to the size of a basketball. Then, it silently flew from the Ming Yuan Ko's sword and flew towards the leopard Yuan Ko. A whoa! The leopard roared. It could feel the danger of the black flame. It leaped backwards to break away from the heavenly sword. It looked at the flame flying towards it with vigilance. When the flame was only a few meters away from Yuan Ko, the leopard let out a low growl and jumped perpendicular to the left of the black flame. In an instant it escaped from the flame's attack path. The flying speed of the flame was too slow. Even a 3-year-old child could easily dodge it. However, what the leopard, Yuan Ko, didn't expect was that the flame turned as it jumped and directly entered Yuan Ko's brain. At the moment when the flame entered its brain, the leopard was a little afraid. It felt that the flame would definitely set its body on fire. However, it didn't expect that after the flame entered its body, there would be nothing else. It didn't feel that it had suffered any harm. Nothing had happened. Are you lying to me? The leopard, Yuan Ko, felt that its intelligence had been insulted. Anger rushed to its head. It pounced towards the heavenly sword again, intending to kill these 2 sword maidens who made it lose face. Heavenly sword, I'll leave this to you. I need to rest for 10 minutes. Ming Yuan, who had used her ultimate skill, collapsed. She turned into a stream of light and flew back into Song Yifei's scabbard. It seemed that this skill had indeed consumed a lot of Ming Yuan's energy. She had no choice but to return to the scabbard to rest. This ultimate skill is finished just like that? Seeing that Ming Yuan's skill, which took such a long time to cast and consumed so much energy, didn't even cause a splash, Song Yifei couldn't help but feel a little anxious. This time, she noticed that after Ming Yuan used that skill, the sword essence in her body had been reduced by half. The sword essence left was less than a sixth. No, this is a very powerful skill. Look at that Yuan Ko now. Gohan pointed at the battlefield in the distance. Song Yifei looked over and saw that the heavenly sword was still fighting with the leopard, Yuan Ko. However, compared to the leopard, Yuan Ko, the current Yuan Ko seemed to have lost a lot in terms of speed and strength. Moreover, its defense was no longer impenetrable. Etion's heavenly sword was already able to cut something from the leopard's body. This Yuan Ko's strength doesn't seem to be as strong as it was before. Song Yifei said doubtfully. Why is that? I think the Ming Yuan sword's ultimate skill must have burned something from this Yuan Ko, Gohan guessed cautiously. Hey, what did the Ming Yuan sword burn? You've already guessed it, haven't you? Song Yifei immediately asked Gohan. This. Gohan didn't know if he should answer. If he told Song Yifei, wouldn't Song Yifei be embarrassed? She was the sword lady, but someone else had to tell her about the skill. It was too embarrassing. My ultimate skill didn't burn Yuan Ko's body, but his soul. In the scabbard, Ming Yuan couldn't stand Song Yifei's incessant questions. Perhaps Song Yifei didn't think it was embarrassing to ask Gohan, but Ming Yuan really did. My soul-burning hellfire can burn Yuan Ko's soul. Unless my body is destroyed, the hellfire will burn forever. As long as it lasts long enough, his soul will be burned to ashes by my hellfire. The Ming Yuan's sword said proudly. What a powerful skill! Song Yifei had never imagined that his sword Maiden's skill would actually be so powerful. At this time, he looked at the battlefield between Yi Tian and Yuan Zhen. That leopard Yuan Zhen's ear had already been chopped off by Yi Tian. The ear that was chopped off was constantly flashing with blue electric light. This leopard's body was actually not made of flesh and blood, but was instead made of machinery. No wonder when Yi Tian's sword chopped down on this leopard's body, sparks would appear. Humans, all of you deserve to die. Suddenly, the leopard spoke in Mandarin. In the next second, its body began a series of complicated changes. In the end, it turned into a humanoid robot with a huge axe and rifle. Leopard Commander, transform. The leopard was a transformer that could transform. So it's a transformer. Gohan's aura changed when he saw Yuan Ko transform. His entire body was burning with a terrifying killing intent. Transformers, all of you deserve to die. Chapter 352. You're saying that this Yuan Ko is a transformer? Song Yifei looked at Yuan Ko, who had transformed into a leopard, in disbelief. That's impossible. I heard that the first form of a transformer is something like a car, an airplane, or a ship, right? I've never heard of a transformer in the form of an animal. Even those mechanical dinosaurs were monsters made of metal, but this transformer's leopard form is exactly the same as the real thing. It's completely different from those transformers. No, they are transformers. I can smell the disgusting, rotten smell of engine oil on their bodies from a kilometer away. Gohan's voice was so cold that it seemed to be able to freeze one's soul. Song Yifei looked at Gohan in surprise. She had never felt such hatred from Gohan. It was as if the enemy in front of them was the enemy who killed Gohan's father. In fact, the transformer in front of them could indeed be called the enemy who killed Gohan's father. This was because the one who broke into the shelter that Gohan and his parents were in and stomped Gohan's parents into meat paste was the leader of the Transformer faction, Optimus Prime. Therefore, when Gohan found out that Yuan Ko was a Transformer, he showed such deep hatred. To Gohan, Transformers were the source of all his hatred. Perhaps in the future, Gohan could let go of a portion of Yuan Ko and not kill him. However, Gohan had to kill all the Transformers, leaving none alive. Yi Tian, come back. Gohan's calm voice, like a cold wind, was transmitted to Yi Tian's ears through the sword mark. What kind of joke is this? This opponent belongs to this female hero. As long as this female hero uses her ultimate move, this Yuan Ko will. Before Yi Tian could finish her sentence, she turned into a ray of light and flew back into Gohan's hand. Gohan had forced Yi Tian to return to his sword because he wanted to personally deal with this transformer. Gohan, you're crazy. We've agreed that you can't force me to do anything. Yi Tian roared at Gohan madly through the sword mark. She was a person with an extremely free personality. What she couldn't accept the most was someone trying to force her to do something. Even if the other party was her sword wielder, Yi Tian still had to refuse. She wanted to fight according to her own way of thinking. Yi Tian, I'll let you scold me all you want when we get back, but right now, please allow me to do something that I must do. Let me kill this Yuan Ko with my own hand, Gohan said to Yi Tian through the sword mark. His words contained such a deep sorrow that even Etion, who had been roaring all this time, quietened down. Is it very important to you to kill this Yuan Ko with your own hands? Etion asked in a deep voice. It's very important. If I can't kill him with my own hands, I will never be able to forgive myself, Gohan replied, enunciating each word clearly. Tui, I'll deal with you later. Etion spat and didn't say anything else. It was obvious that she had tacitly agreed with Gohan's actions. Gohan held the heaven-reliant sword in his hand and walked step by step towards the leopard commander who had completed his transformation. Gohan, what are you doing? Song Yifei was shocked when she saw Gohan suddenly put away the sword and walk away from her side towards Yuan Ko. She couldn't understand what Gohan was trying to do. Don't mind this man, Yifei, Ming Yuan said meaningfully. To be able to become Etion's master, this man is hiding a lot more than you can imagine. Just wait and see, he will come back safe and sound. Why did this sword wielder take back his sword Maiden? His sword Maiden clearly didn't receive any damage. Wenjun looked at Gohan in shock as he walked towards Yuan Ko. Her mouth opened wider and wider. Is he crazy? He's actually walking towards Yuan Ko. Does he think he can fight Yuan Ko with his own body? Wenjun couldn't understand Gohan's actions at all. In a normal battle, the sword wielder would command the battle from a relatively long distance away. That way, if the sword lady was no match for the sword wielder, there would be enough time and distance to retrieve the sword lady and use it to escape. Just like earlier, if Wenjun hadn't been cautious and had commanded the battle from a kilometer away from Yuan Ko, he would have died under the claws of the Transformer Leopard Commander. It was precisely because of this 1 kilometer distance that Wenjun had time to escape to the hovering bus and save his own life. Young master, this sword-bearer is holding Lady Etion in his hand, right? Uncle Huang, who was lying in the medical pod, had already woken up. He could speak to Wenjun through the medical pod's communication system. It seems like a lot of interesting things have happened in Yuzhong City recently. I didn't expect Lady Etion to be born. Young master, do you know a legend about Lady Etion? Uncle Huang said with a hint of happiness and sorrow. What legend? Is there any legend about Lady Etion that I don't know? Wenjun frowned. Not so long ago, Wenjun was the person who understood Lady Etion the most in this world. Furthermore, the first time he had synchronized with a sword lady, he had set his sights on Lady Etion. Unfortunately, Lady Etion had ignored him completely. She hadn't reacted at all to him, the descendant of an old friend. This had been a huge blow to Wenjun, so the sword lady had only randomly synchronized with a man-made sword lady, the separation and reunion sword. Wenjun couldn't help but feel a little jealous when he thought about how the heavenly sword that he had dreamed of was now in the hands of another person. Haha, you don't know about this legend, young master. Only Uncle Huang's ancestor knows about it. When Uncle Huang's ancestor was still serving His Majesty once told him that Lady Etion couldn't be synchronized with just anyone. Only sword wielder who had the ability to become a sword master would be able to gain Lady Etion's favor. Now it seems like this legend is true. This sword wielder seems to be a sword master too. Sword master. Wenjun gazed at Gohan's back in fascination. How great would it be if he, Wenjun, could also become a sword master? Is Gohan really a sword master just as the two sirs said? Sword Immortal Eagle Cat, who was in the driver's seat, was able to observe Gohan's every move through the camera that was sent out by the hovercraft's battle recording system. When he saw Gohan take the initiative to step forward, he wasn't surprised at all. Instead, he was curious. He desperately wanted to know how outstanding this man who had been accepted as a disciple by Sword Immortal Cloud Sky was. He wanted to know if he was worthy of becoming a disciple of a Sword Immortal. Meanwhile, Ku Rakin was sitting on the roof of the bus. His eyesight was very good, so he could clearly see the battlefield in the distance even without binoculars. Whether it was when Yi Wenjun was in danger, when Ming Yuan used her ultimate move, or when Gohan charged forward with his sword, Kurakin's face didn't change at all. If one had to say anything, it could only be said that Kurakin's face maintained a faint, disdainful expression. He didn't care about Gohan's actions at all. Human, you finally stopped hiding behind these women. Commander Leopard moved his arms behind his back, and 2 golden axes appeared in his hands. After transforming into his human form, Commander Leopard seemed to have gained the ability to speak. From Commander Leopard's tone, he seemed to look down on humans like Yi Wenjun, who hid behind sword ladies. In fact, all the Yuan Ko looked down on humans. Even if they died under sword ladies' swords, they still looked down on humans who didn't dare to fight head-on. Therefore, when Commander Leopard saw that Gohan was ready to fight him head-on, he was very excited and impressed. Commander Leopard, I promise I'll let you die a quick death later. Commander Leopard promised benevolently. You're a transformer, aren't you? Gohan ignored Commander Leopard's benevolence and immediately began to confirm Commander Leopard's origin. A human like you actually guessed my origin. That's right, I'm a transformer from Cybertron. I'm a subordinate of the leader of the Autobot faction, Gorilla General Optimus Prime. Human, why are you asking? Commander Leopard admitted his identity straightforwardly before asking Gohan. Gorilla General? Optimus Prime? Commander Leopard? Gohan chewed on these 3 names. What's your relationship with Optimus Prime? Optimus Prime is the successor of Optimus Prime. When they came to Earth, we ruled all of Cybertron. But soon, Optimus Prime will lead Cybertron's army. Commander Leopard's mouth was really fast. Before Gohan could ask anything, Commander Leopard had already told him about his origin. It was only when he mentioned Cybertron's army that Commander Leopard suddenly shut his mouth. He realized that he had said too much. Human, since I, Commander Leopard, am willing to leave your corpse intact, tell me, where is Optimus Prime now? Commander Leopard didn't care about leaking the secret. In his opinion, killing this weak human was as easy as blowing off dust. You're asking about Optimus Prime? Then you'll have to go to hell. Gohan's face was ferocious. After he said that, his figure flashed and appeared behind Commander Leopard. The heavenly sword in his hand stabbed through the gap between Commander Leopard's transformed body. Damn human! Commander Leopard let out a furious roar as he felt a sharp pain in his body. At least 100 sensors had been destroyed by Gohan's sword. Although Commander Leopard's body was mechanical, he was not a human-made robot. He was a great silicon-based life, a real life. A life that could feel pain and emotions. In pain, Commander Leopard smashed the giant axe in his left hand at Gohan's head. Gohan snorted coldly, and more than 500 quarks of sword essence poured into the blade of the heavenly sword. The blade of the heavenly sword was wrapped in a golden color. Then, Gohan held the heavenly sword in his hand and pulled it back slightly. A golden arm was removed from Commander Leopard's arm. My arm. Commander Leopard was dumbfounded. He couldn't understand how his arm had left his body in just one move. Chapter 353. My hand, how did this happen? Leopard Commander looked at his arm, which had been casually tossed onto the ground by Gohan, in disbelief. He could not believe that his hand had been chopped off just like that. Song Yifei and Yi Wenjun, who were watching from the side, also expressed their disbelief. Even the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit was so shocked that he dropped the glass of water in his hand. How did this happen? He broke the defense of the dragon-level Yuan Ko with just one slash. Not only did he break it, but he also chopped off his arm. Even I couldn't do this when I was at the famed sword tier. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit mumbled to himself. From what he knew, it was impossible for a famed sword lady to chop off the dragon-level Yuan Ko with just one slash, let alone a treasured sword tier wielder. At the same time, Ku Rakin, who was sitting on the roof of the car, was also stunned. He had completely lost his previous calmness. If it was me, would I be able to do it? Kurak-in asked himself, but Kurak-in did not answer for a long time. It was unknown whether he did not know the answer, or he was too ashamed to answer the question. I have 900 quarks of sword essence left. Gohan, who had chopped down Leopard Commander, silently calculated the amount of sword essence in his body. Yesterday Gohan had used the automatic sword essence detector to check his sword essence and found that his sword essence in reality had reached 1,419 quarks. The last time he asked Song Yifei to test his sword essence, it was 1,119 quarks. After completing the Heroes Rises from Insignificance dungeon, Tomono Kakashi gave Gohan a bottle of sword essence oral solution with 200 quarks of sword essence. Gohan's sword essence became 1,319 points. In addition to the 10,000 quarks of sword essence pill that Gohan obtained from Yaoguang in the game, Gohan obtained 99 quarks of sword essence in reality through the normal 0.9% conversion rate. Altogether, he had 1,419 quarks of sword essence. Yes, everything seemed normal and in line with the laws of mathematics, but Gohan felt that it was too normal. In fact, it was normal for sword essence in reality to have a 5% deviation from the calculated sword essence in the game. However, this 0% deviation made Gohan very suspicious. Not to mention that Gohan was too paranoid. Ever since the Heroes Rises from Insignificance dungeon, Gohan had sensed that there were some strange things around him. Especially the emerald ring on his finger. Gohan could guess that he had far more secrets than he had imagined. Back to the battlefield, there were many reasons why Gohan was able to cut off Leopard Commander's arm with one slash. The first reason was, of course, that Ming Yuan's soul-burning hellfire was still quietly burning Leopard Commander's soul. For Transformers, it was burning the tinder in their bodies. Didn't using hellfire to burn the tinder sound magical? The weakening of the tinder was directly reflected in Leopard Commander's body. His defense began to weaken and become fragile. However, this was not the main reason why Leopard Commander's arm was cut off by Gohan. Even if his defense had declined, it had not broken away from the defense of the Flood Dragon Yuan Ko. This was not a defense that Gohan could easily cut off. The most important reason was that Gohan had infused 500 quarks of sword essence into Heaven Reliant's sword to execute the 9 swords of Black Heaven, Sword Soldier Kill. It was also the ring of golden light that had appeared on Heaven Reliant's sword's blade earlier. This was a move used in the 9 swords of Black Heaven to strengthen Sword Maiden's defense. As the number of quarks poured into the sword essence changed, the Sword Maiden's armor-piercing ability kept increasing. Gohan had poured 500 quarks of sword essence into Heavenly Sword, which was equivalent to more than a third of Gohan's sword essence. In addition, Heavenly Sword's material was amazing and its armor-piercing ability was superior. Only then was he able to cut off Leopard Commander's arm. However, if Gohan were to be replaced by someone like Song Yifei or Yi Wenjun, they would not be able to cut off Leopard Commander's arm even if they were wielding Heavenly Sword that had 5,000 quarks of sword essence to increase its armor-piercing ability. Gohan's slash looked simple and casual, but it was actually a very ingenious move. Gohan's blade had cut through the gaps between the various armor components on Leopard Commander's body. He had avoided many critical parts that were made of tough alloy, so the blade only needed to cut through about 8% of the armor to cut off Leopard Commander's arm. This was like how Butcher Ding would dismember a cow. Because he was familiar with the cow's body, he could dismember it with ease. However, the strange thing was that Butcher Ding slaughtered cows every day, so he knew the cow's muscles and bones like the back of his hand. That was why he was able to bypass all the parts that were difficult to cut. However, this was Gohan's first time fighting a real Transformer. How did he know the Transformer's body like the back of his hand? My arm! Leopard Commander wailed, and his electronic eyes began to flash with a terrifying blood-red light. "Human, I'm going to kill you!" Leopard Commander ignored the electric sparks that were constantly coming out of the cut on his arm. He threw the axe in his other hand aside and retracted his palm into his wrist. His wrist turned into a black cannon muzzle, and a blue light gradually gathered in the muzzle. Polymerizer cannon. Leopard Commander fired the blue energy ball from the cannon muzzle at Gohan at lightning speed. This was a furious attack from Dragon-level Yuan Ko. No matter which sword wielder it was, if they were to take a direct hit, their shields would be broken even if they did not die. Of course, this was under the premise that the cannon could hit Gohan head-on. Unfortunately, this was completely wishful thinking. When the smoke dissipated, there was a super deep pit with a diameter of about 10 meters and a depth of about 3 meters on the ground. However, there was nothing in the pit except some charred plant ashes. Gohan was not hit by the polymerizer cannon. "I'm here." Leopard Commander heard Gohan's voice. Before he could react, he felt that dozens of sensors on his chest had been damaged. Reporting, your chest has been pierced. Sensor number 152,858 to 153,012 damaged. The computer in Leopard Commander's body began to report the damage to his body to Leopard Commander. The loss of those sensors meant that Leopard Commander had lost control of a certain part of his body. Next, Leopard Commander fully experienced what a human's swordsmanship and footwork was like. This human sword wielder was like a slippery loach, constantly wandering around Leopard Commander. Every time he attacked, he could leave a deep wound on Leopard Commander's body and damage several of his sensors. Leopard Commander could not attack Gohan at all and could only endure Gohan's attacks again and again. Speaking of which, Leopard Commander also used an axe and knew a certain degree of melee skills and axe technique. However, compared with Gohan's sword energy, Leopard Commander did not even have the courage to take out his axe and fight again. In terms of combat skills, he was on a completely different level from this human. In addition to the axe, Leopard Commander could also use an even more powerful polymerization cannon that could kill this despicable human with one shot. However, Leopard Commander's polymerization cannon could only be fired once every 3 seconds, which meant that Leopard Commander could only attack once every 3 seconds. 3 seconds was enough for Gohan to leave more than a dozen sword marks on Leopard Commander's body. However, Leopard Commander's polymerization cannon could not even touch Gohan's skin. Every time it was fired, Gohan would easily dodge it. It was actually very easy to dodge Leopard Commander's polymerization cannon. As long as one judged the trajectory of the polymerization cannon correctly, one could easily dodge the attack. Gohan's body's reaction speed was always a step faster than Leopard Commander's, so Leopard Commander had no way of hitting Gohan. "Human, don't jump around if you have the guts." Leopard Commander's electronic voice began to get irritated from Gohan's beating. After a period of fighting, the sensors in his body had been damaged by Gohan. Once all the sensors in his body were damaged, not just 90%, Leopard Commander would completely lose control of his body. Leopard Commander decided to use his killer move. His polymerization cannon transformed back into the shape of a right palm. Then, a handle popped out from the outside of his right leg. He grabbed the handle with his right hand and pulled it up. A rifle about 1 meter long emerged from his leg. This was Leopard Commander's third weapon after his axe and polymerization cannon. It was also his most powerful weapon, the gold leopard rifle. "Human, you're dead." Leopard Commander retreated first, using his speed to increase the distance between him and Gohan. Then, he grabbed the rifle and fired a shot at Gohan's position. There was a loud bang and thousands of scattered shrapnel formed a huge fan and shot at Gohan. It seemed that this gold leopard rifle was a shotgun. The bullets it fired could split into thousands of tiny shrapnel at the same time, forming a huge area of more than 100 square meters. This area was so large that even with Gohan's speed, he could not dodge it. More than a dozen shrapnel hit Gohan's body. Although they were all blocked by the steel membrane shield, the shield's energy was reduced by about 8%. This rifle is so powerful. Even Gohan couldn't help but exclaim in admiration of the rifle's power. This rifle had only fired one bullet, and this bullet split into thousands of shrapnel. Only a dozen of these shrapnel hit Gohan's body, which meant that Gohan had only received 1% to 2% of the rifle's full power. Just 1% to 2% of the damage was enough to make Gohan's steel membrane shield lose 8% of its energy. If Gohan had received the full damage of this rifle head-on, one could imagine Gohan turning into a honeycomb. Haha, fear, human! Fear the power of Leopard Commander! Seeing that his bullet had successfully hit Gohan, Leopard Commander finally laughed happily. Finally, he no longer kept getting misses. He had finally attacked that damned enemy. Very good, your weapon is very powerful. This battle is over. Gohan, who had been hit, suddenly stopped moving. He stood in place and looked at Leopard Commander, as if he had given up resisting. Human, you're very smart. You know that resistance is meaningless. Then, Leopard Commander, I'll leave your corpse intact. No, I'll still cut off one of your arms. Leopard Commander thought that Gohan had really given up resisting by standing there, so he immediately said proudly, "To me, there's only one reason why the battle is over, and that's because you're dead." Gohan snorted coldly. Leopard Commander was stunned, and then the surface of his body suddenly lit up with countless tiny lights. These lights weren't very bright. Under the cover of the sun, they were only at the level of fireflies. But it was this firefly-like light that made Leopard Commander's face show great fear, because he found that his body had begun to move uncontrollably. Leopard Commander, transform. Leopard Commander had never ordered his body to transform, but his body automatically activated it. The moment Leopard Commander transformed, a creaking sound of steel twisting came from his body. The next moment, all the armor and parts on his body peeled off his body like broken vase fragments. In less than 5 seconds, Leopard Commander's entire body turned into a pile of broken iron foam, leaving only a blue ball of light floating in the air. This was the tinder of a transformer. It was the core of a transformer, the strongest and weakest soul. Once it lost the protection of its body and let the tinder float in the air, it could burn for less than 5 minutes before automatically extinguishing. Once the tinder was extinguished, it meant that the transformer was completely dead. Go back to Cybertron. That is, if you can go back. Gohan walked to the tinder's side, took out a water bottle from his dimensional pocket, and dripped a drop of water on the tinder. The tinder trembled slightly before distorting and dissipating into the air. At the same time, a dimensional vortex appeared, about to absorb Leopard Commander's corpse. Etion, I'll leave this dimensional vortex to you. Gohan released Etion again. Although he looked unhappy, Etion still put his upper body into the dimensional vortex and began to use his sword hilt to absorb the sword elements in the dimensional vortex. Chapter 354. Amazing! How did this sword-bearer win? Iwenjun, who had been staring closely at the battlefield, suddenly realized that he could not understand what was happening in front of him. After the sword-bearer severed Commander Leopard's hand, he did not do anything shocking. Instead, he circled around Yuan Ko and jumped up and down. Although he managed to hit Yuan Ko many times, he did not seem to deal fatal damage to Yuan Ko like how he had severed his hand at the beginning. Then, they saw Yuan Ko take out a new weapon and successfully hit Gohan, causing him quite a lot of damage. Iwenjun was very nervous when he saw this. Since Gohan was already injured, he would be continuously injured and eventually die in the hands of Yuan Ko. Just as Iwenjun was worried about Gohan and felt that Gohan might die at any time, something magical happened. Yuan Ko's body lit up and turned into a pile of slag. Then, a dimensional vortex appeared and he died completely. There was nothing left of him. Uncle Huang, What happened just now? Wenjun asked Uncle Huang, who was beside him, dumbfounded. Young master, although I really want to answer your question, I can't see anything from inside the medical pod. Uncle Huang's bitter laugh came from inside the medical pod. This Wenjun's brain must have been damaged. Uncle Huang's eyes could only see the medical pod filled with culture fluid and the sky above the medical pod's lid. Other than that, he couldn't see anything else. It could be seen that young master Wenjun was extremely reliant on Uncle Huang. He had grown up under Uncle Huang's care. What happened just now? Song Yifei and the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit also asked the same question. Both of them had no idea what Gohan had done to Yuan Ko to cause Yuan Ko's sudden death. It was understandable that Song Yifei did not understand. After all, she had only been a sword bearer for more than a week. This was her first time fighting outside the city, so it was understandable that she did not know anything. However, it was interesting that the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit couldn't figure it out. Every sword spirit had been nurtured through hundreds of battles. They had seen all kinds of battles, but a battle like Gohan's was something that the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit had never seen before. What the F***ck? Perhaps Julvren was the only one on the entire battlefield who noticed something was amiss, but it was only a tiny bit of an inkling. Gu Luren could only guess a little of what Gohan had done on the surface, but just like the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit, Gu Luren was completely at a loss as to what exactly Gohan had done and what the principles behind this method were. How are you guys? Gohan brought the dizzy Song Yifei to Wenjun's side. He looked at the time on the medical pod and realized that the old sword wielder would need more than 3 hours to complete the treatment and come out of the medical pod. We are all fine. Thank you, sir, for your help. Wenjun will remember this and will repay you generously in the future. Wenjun stood up and bowed deeply to Gohan, even though this young swordsman was currently in dire straits. Although the young sword wielder was in dire straits, his every move had the demeanor of a master and a sense of pride. It was as if he was telling Gohan that he, Wenjun, would repay his kindness 100-fold. No need, I don't need you to repay me. You better take care of yourself. In the future, Gohan would definitely have to save many people. Gohan did not have the time to wait for the people he saved to repay him. Perhaps Gohan's indifferent attitude made Wenjun angry and ashamed. He immediately stood up from the ground and said loudly, "Although I, Wenjun, am in dire straits, I am still a man of steel. I owe you a favor today, and I will repay you even if I have to sacrifice my life in the future." You don't want to repay my kindness by risking your life? Hearing this, Gohan laughed in disdain. How forthright, how imposing, how heroic. But is your life really your own? Are you really worthy of your parents who raised you by saying this? Remember, I, Gohan, do not need your worthless life. You should keep your life and be filial to your parent. Ignorant person. Gohan's words were so loud that Wenjun was so ashamed that he could not say anything. What Wenjun did not know was that Gohan's words were his most sincere and heartfelt words. Gohan had money and power now, but he had no parents that he could be filial to. Every time he thought of this, Gohan couldn't help but feel pain in his heart. That was why he hated those who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth, who didn't cherish their own lives, who didn't care about their parents' feelings, and who just wanted to be a hero. If Gohan was given a choice to exchange his current power for his parents' rebirth, Gohan would not hesitate for even a second. Come on, you're educating others. Can't you see that Mr. Wenjun is older than you? What qualifications do you have to educate others? Song Yifei seemed to be criticizing Gohan, but the meaning behind his words was something that Song Yifei had to understand himself. No, Mr. Gohan is right. I really can't only care about my own kindness and ignore my parents. I am too unfilial. Wenjun let out a long sigh. His attitude made Gohan look more pleasing to the eye. This guy's character was not bad. At least he could accept criticism. Benefactors, since Yuan Ko is dead, I will return to the beacon tower. Thank you for your help. I will never forget your kindness." After saying that, Yi Wenjun planned to carry the medical pod with Uncle Wang and return to the beacon tower. The medical pod itself could be stored in a dimensional pocket, but if there was a person in the medical pod, it would be another matter. Naturally, the medical pod with a person in it could not be transported through a dimensional pocket. Yi Wenjun could only lift the medical pod himself and transport it back to the beacon tower. As a result, Yi Wenjun's hands had just placed on the two handles of the medical pod when he exerted a little force. He screamed and fell to the ground. There was a faint trace of blood on his shoulder. The wound that had stopped bleeding seemed to show signs of bleeding again. Under normal circumstances, this was not a problem. After all, Yi Wenjun was a sword wielder who enjoyed the blessing of a sword maiden. His strength was far beyond that of a mortal. Carrying a medical pod that weighed more than 100 kilograms was similar to a mortal carrying a water basin that weighed 1 or 2 kilograms. But that was under normal circumstances. Don't forget, Yi Wenjun's shoulder blades were pierced by Commander Leopard. Although the bleeding had been stopped after the emergency treatment by Gohan's gold sore medicine, it did not heal his broken bones and meridians. At this time, Yi Wenjun's 2 arms were still fine, but if he wanted to use force to lift something, it was simply courting death. Just the sharp pain from his shoulder blades could kill him, not to mention the terrible consequences of the wound reopening. "Mr. Yi, are you okay?" Seeing Yi Wenjun's wound reopening and bleeding, Song Yifei asked with concern. I'm fine. I'll wait here for a few hours until Uncle Huang is cured in the medical pod." Yi Wenjun shook his head repeatedly, indicating that he was fine. "You guys go on your way. You guys go first, don't worry about me." "All right." Song Yifei did not think much and planned to leave first according to Yi Wenjun's instructions. However, he did not expect to be pulled back by Gohan. "We can't leave him here. It's not safe here." The usually aloof Gohan was actually starting to worry about the other sword wielder's safety. Since Yuan Ko has already come out through the dimensional rift, it means that the nearby dimensional wall is at its weakest state. It is very likely that a new Yuan Ko will appear. Given their current condition, even if they encounter a tiger-grade Yuan Ko, it will be a dead end. Then what should we do? After hearing Gohan's words, Song Yifei felt that Gohan's words were very reasonable. If they left the two of them here, it was very likely that it was just as Gohan had said. A new Yuan Ko would appear, and the two of them would definitely die. "Let me ask you." Gohan suddenly moved closer to Yi Wenjun's ear and whispered a few words. Yi Wenjun initially chose to shake his head and deny it, but after Gohan said a few more words, Yi Wenjun could only nod helplessly and admit to it. "We will board the bus with them." Gohan helped Yi Wenjun up and lifted the medical pod that weighed more than 100 kilograms with one hand. He then walked directly to the hovering bus that was parked there. "Bring them on the bus?" Song Yifei was shocked and murmured to himself in disbelief. "Will Lord Eagle Cat agree to it?" Of course, the Eagle Cat sword spirit would not agree. When he heard that Gohan wanted to bring Yi Wenjun and Yi Wenjun on the bus, the Eagle Cat immediately rejected it. "I don't object to your style of treating patients and saving people. But Gohan, you have to understand our current situation and our mission. How about this, you bring them to the other beacon towers nearby, and the sword bearers there can take care of them." The Eagle Cat sword spirit said sternly. "Mr. Gu, thank you for your kindness, but Lord Sword Spirit is right. Your mission is more important, so I won't disturb you anymore. Just bring me and Uncle Huang to the nearby beacon tower. I'm very familiar with the sword bearers there, so they will take care of me." When Yi Wenjun saw the Eagle Cat sword spirit, his whole body was a little unnatural, but it was not the unnatural feeling of fear when he saw a spirit sword bearer. Instead, it was the kind of unnatural feeling that he did not dare to face, as if he was deeply afraid of being recognized by the Eagle Cat sword spirit. No, I feel that it is necessary for me to bring you along, or rather, you should appear in this mission. Gohan smiled indifferently, and then dialed his personal terminal. The person on the other end of the terminal was none other than Gohan's chief master, Cloudy Sword Celestial Lu Lei. Gohan and Lu Lei did not make any sound during the call, but communicated through the conversion of brain waves, so the others present could not hear what Gohan was saying, but they were sure that Gohan was indeed communicating with someone. Lord Eagle Cat, my master wants to talk to you. Gohan transferred Lu Lei's call to the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit, and the Eagle Cat glared at Gohan with dissatisfaction. This guy actually dared to use an immortal sword bearer to pressure him, which made the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit very angry, but the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit could not refuse Lu Lei's call. Okay, I understand, so that's how it is. I have no objections, just do it. After hanging up the call with Lu Lei, the Eagle Cat looked at Gohan meaningfully. You can do it, Gohan, you can do it. Thank you for your praise, Senior Eagle Cat. Gohan's reply was very respectful. Humph, the two of them can stay, but there are no more rooms for them in this car. Since you were the one who provoked them, from now on, the two of them will stay in your room. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit waved his hand. That's it, start driving again. How much space could a bus have? How much space could there be after it was divided into 4 parts? In Gohan's room, there was only a bed that was less than a meter wide. Naturally, it was enough for Gohan alone, but with the addition of 2 people, the space could no longer be described as cramped. 3 men squeezed into a bed that was less than a meter wide. Just thinking about it made him a little excited. Chapter 355. Why do you have to bring me along? Iwenjun asked Gohan suspiciously as he sat in Gohan's room. Because I feel like I need to bring you along. Gohan replied without even lifting his head. Because of my identity? Iwenjun clenched his fist. If it wasn't for his identity, his life would definitely be very easy. He wouldn't have to suffer so much. That's right, it's because of your identity. Because you are the descendant of Zhetian Jiendi. Gohan enunciated each word clearly. He never imagined that Iwenjun would actually be the descendant of Zhetian Jiendi I Ching. What? You're saying he's I Ching's descendant? Tian, who had been lying on the bed drinking in boredom, suddenly stood up. Meanwhile, Qingpin, who had returned to the infant pouch in Gohan's arms, rubbed his eyes and asked in confusion. Gohan, who is I Ching? Qingpin's new sister? It seemed like Qingpin had also taken I Ching as a sword lady. From the looks of it, his appearance really is somewhat similar to that bastard. They both have the same cunning face. Tian stared at Iwenjun's face for a while, and said with a grunt. Zhetian Jiendi I Ching's 17th generation descendant, Iwenjun greets Lady Tian. When Iwenjun heard Tian's words, he immediately stood up and bowed to Tian. Tian was his ancestor's Zhetian Jiendi's sword lady. She was also a comrade who had fought alongside his ancestor, so it was only natural for Iwenjun to bow to Tian. There's no need for that. I will never be able to accept your family's etiquette. Tian harumphed coldly and lay back down, no longer paying attention to Zhetian Jiendi's descendant. How could this be? Iwenjun scratched his head in confusion. He could not understand why Tian, who was once I Ching's sword mistress, would treat him with such an attitude, as if he was her enemy. Iwenjun looked at Gohan in confusion. Gohan waved his hand. Don't look at me, I don't know either. You'll have to ask your ancestor himself. Let's see if Zhetian Jiendi left behind any words. My ancestor was a heroic man. He came naked and left naked. Apart from our family's bloodline, he didn't leave anything for me. Iwenjun said gloomily. When other Jiendi passed away, they would more or less leave behind some resources for their descendants so that their bloodline could continue. However, their ancestor, Zhetian Jiendi, was extremely stingy. He built a huge Yuzhang base city but left nothing for his descendant. As a result, even though Zetian Jiendi was one of the strongest Jiendis in history, his descendants still ended up like this. It looks like Yi Wenjun isn't the type to lie. Could it be that Yi Qing really didn't leave anything for his descendants? Gohan thought to himself. He had many reasons for bringing Yi Wenjun along. One of them was that he wanted to befriend Yi Wenjun and learn more about Zetian Jiendi from him. Gohan had always believed that Zetian Jiendi would leave something for his descendant. Perhaps these things could reveal some secret. His Majesty Zetian didn't leave nothing behind. At least for now, our target is one of His Majesty Zetian's ruins. This is also one of the reasons why I asked Sword Immortal Cloud Sky to bring you along. After all, you are Zetian Jiendi's descendant. No matter what, you should have a share of Zetian Jiendi's ruins. That's right. This was the most important reason why Gohan took the initiative to bring Yi Wenjun along. Since the ruins of Chongyang Mountain were left behind by Zetian Jiendi, how could Zetian Jiendi's bloodline be excluded from the group? Moreover, Gohan had the emerald ring on his finger. Gohan immediately reported to Lu Lei, hoping to bring Yi Wenjun into the group. Lu Lei didn't hesitate. The Yi clan shouldn't be excluded. Even if the Yi clan had fallen, it couldn't hide the fact that their bloodline came from Zetian Jiendi. My ancestors' ruins? Where is it? Why don't I know about it? Yi Wenjun asked subconsciously after hearing Gohan's news. Gohan didn't keep Yi Wenjun in suspense. He told him everything about the Chongyang Mountain ruins. Something like that actually happened? I didn't know about it at all. Yi Wenjun's expression was agitated and ugly. As a direct descendant of his bloodline, he didn't know anything about the ruins left behind by his ancestor. No matter how he looked at it, he felt like he had been slapped in the face. After that, Gohan and Yi Wenjun had a long conversation. This descendant of the Yi family was not someone who could keep secrets to himself. Moreover, he was currently filled with bitterness. After being seduced by Gohan a few times, he told Gohan everything he knew about the Yi family's situation. Zetian Jiendi didn't have any children when he was young. It wasn't until he became Jiendi that he turned the heavenly court upside down and built China's second Bay City, Yuzhong Bay City, that he settled down and married an ordinary woman who admired him. It took him 10 years to give birth to a son. When this son reached the age of 16, the heaven-shrouding Sword Emperor ascended to become an immortal. Zetian Jiendi spent his entire life worrying about Yuzhong Bay City. All his wealth and resources were used to build the city. When he passed away, apart from a house and a few belongings, he didn't leave anything valuable to his son. However, because of his benevolence in establishing the Yuzhong base, the support of his old subordinates, and the fact that Yi Qing's son and grandson had become immortal sword-bearers and were in charge of the Sword Committee and Council of Yuzhong City, the Yi family had been very famous in the first 100 years of Yuzhong City. They were known as the #1 family in Yuzhong City, the Heaven-Shrouding family. However, by the 5th generation, the Yi clan began to decline. It wasn't that people coveted the Yi clan's position and wanted to take over the position of chairman of the Sword Committee. It was just that the 5th generation of the Yi clan was no longer suitable. This 5th generation descendant was a pureblood, which meant he couldn't become a sword bearer. Yuzhong City's Sword Committee could not be led by an ordinary person. The Sword Committee could only be controlled by a sword bearer. This 5th generation successor also understood this, so after his father resigned, he did not have any illusions about the position of the chairman of the Sword Committee. Instead, he began to lead a befuddled and dreamy life of luxury. He enjoyed delicacies from land to sea, pleasure to the fullest. In the end, before he was 40, he died in a woman's belly. A large portion of the Yi clan's 100 years of accumulated wealth was squandered by him. If he hadn't accidentally impregnated a prostitute in the last year of his life, the Yi clan would have no more descendants. What followed was the Yi family's day of suffering. Although the sixth generation was not a pure-blood human, he had tried his entire life. He had tried all the ancient sword maidens in Yuzhong City and Yanjing City, but he could not find a sword maiden who could synchronize with him. In the end, the sixth generation came up with an ultimate plan, that was to have children. He tried his best to have children. The more children he had, the higher the chances of the seventh generation becoming a sword bearer. Needless to say, the first half of the plan went well. The sixth generation, family head, had a total of 13 children, 7 boys and 6 girls. Even the gender balance was balanced. In the end, none of the 7 boys and 6 girls produced a sword bearer. The sixth generation, clan head was so angry that he died. None of the 13 children were kind and fought for the position of clan head. The entire core region was in a foul atmosphere due to their fighting. The clan's already weakened reputation was completely destroyed by this fight. In the end, Yuzhong City's Sword Commission could not stand it anymore. They forcefully separated the 13 children and froze all the clan's assets. They announced that whoever became a sword bearer would have the right to inherit the clan's wealth. This was a fair and just solution, so the 13 descendants began to give birth to more children. Finally, when the seventh generation reached 123 children, the youngest son of the sixth generation became an ancient sword wielder, ending the battle for the position of head of the family. The Sword Commission did not covet the clan's assets and returned all the frozen assets to the seventh generation clan head. The clan head was chosen, but the side effects came. All the 123 family members were trash who wanted to live the life of a nouveau riche. The seventh generation clan head was cowardly and only wanted to prevent the family from going back to the days of constant fighting for asset. Hence, he tried to satisfy the needs of these trash. In the end, the entire seventh and eighth generation were trash who weighed more than 200 kilograms. The entire clan's resources and wealth were completely consumed by these trash. In the eighth generation, just as the eighth master was thinking about how to drive out the growing number of family members, God came to his aid. It was the first time Yuzhong City was completely breached without an emperor sword bearer. The entire core area was a sea of blood, and only the eighth master of the family managed to escape. The rest of the family members were left behind in the core area and became Yuan Hu's food. Thus, the family's population was reduced, but the family's strength was reduced to the same level as an ordinary sword bearer. There was nothing much to say after that. The next generation of clan heads would at most become sword bearers like Wenjun. They would not have the ability to revive the clan. The Yuzhong Sword Commission only allowed these powerful Jiandi descendants to live and pass down their bloodline. Hence, the clan lived a miserable life for hundreds of years until Wenjun's generation. Wenjun's father was an ancient sword bearer but did nothing. He did not want to go out to fight and only wanted to hide at home and drink. The burden of the family fell on Wenjun's shoulders. Chapter 356. There were many reasons for the family's decline. Of course, the lack of talent was the main reason, but it was also because the previous family heads were tired and incompetent. It wasn't that they couldn't find a sword maiden that they could synchronize with, but it was because their sword essence didn't meet the requirements for synchronization. They were too lazy and relied on their status as the descendants of the heaven-shrouding sword emperor. Even without the hero coin, Yuzhong City wouldn't really force them to go out and do quests. In order to preserve the bloodline of the heaven-shrouding sword emperor, they treated it like raising a rice worm. However, Wenjun was one of the few descendants who was ambitious and wanted to revive the family. That was why he desperately participated in all kinds of battles and accumulated sword essence. At the age of 20, he became a treasure sword wielder. Then, because the mission of guarding the beacon tower gave a lot of hero coins, Wenjun risked his life and took the initiative to join the ranks of the beacon tower guards. One had to know that the beacon tower was usually used by sword-bearers who had committed a crime to offset their sentence. For example, if you were sentenced to 10 years in prison, you only needed to guard the beacon for 10 months to offset your sentence. Very few people were willing to guard a beacon. There were a lot of beacons, but there were not enough criminals to guard them, so Yuzhong City increased the reward for guarding the beacons. It seemed that the most recent sword-bearers who guarded the beacons for a month could get a reward of 5,000 hero coins. This was far more than the reward given by other missions, so Yi Wenjun brought his henchman, Uncle Huang, to guard the beacons. Today was the 3rd month they had been guarding the beacons. This retainer, Uncle Huang, had been with the Yi family since Zhejiandi. Back then, the heaven-shrouding sword family had many retainers. During Dai Feng's time, there were more than 30 sword-bearers ranging from ancient to famed sword. Later, the Yi family declined and the retainers gradually dispersed. In the end, only Uncle Huang was left as the most loyal retainer. He never left the Yi family for hundreds of years. Until now, he still protected the last descendant of the Yi family, Yi Wenjun. This was the general story of the Yi clan. Gu Han, who had never cared about the Yi clan, sighed. He didn't think that the descendants of the illustrious heaven-shrouding sword emperor would decline to this extent. Even the clan's base was completely destroyed during the difficult sword era. The direct line of inheritance was also intermittent. He wouldn't be able to get any information about the heaven-shrouding sword emperor from Yi Wenjun, let alone about himself and the heaven-shrouding sword emperor. From Yi Wenjun's words, the heaven-shrouding sword emperor had always been described as a man. In other words, they had always believed the heaven-shrouding sword emperor to be a man. They had no idea that their ancestor, Yi Qing, was most likely a woman. If Guhan took the initiative to tell Yi Wenjun that Zhejiandi was a woman, Yi Wenjun would probably treat it as an insult to Zhetianjiendi and cut ties with Guhan on the spot. This trip to Changyang Mountain is an opportunity for you. Perhaps His Majesty Zhetian hid some relics for your descendant. If you can find these relics, the Yi clan might be able to rise again. Gu Han comforted Yi Wenjun, which was rare. Gu Han never comforted people. That's right, Yi Wenjun. I understand. Thank you, Mr. Gu. Yi Wenjun nodded. Her eyes suddenly welled up with tears. Thank you, Mr. Gu, for remembering our Yi family and knowing that these relics were left behind by our ancestors. Those guys from the Sword Council have completely forgotten about our Yi family. If we had not met you by chance, we would never have known that our ancestors left behind such riches for us. Yi Wenjun was right. Lu Lei and Zhu Wudao had never thought about the Yi family. It was not that Lu Lei was heartless and could ignore the Yi family. It was because the Yi family had been too weak for the past few hundred years. It was so weak that everyone had almost forgotten about its existence in Yuzhong City. Lu Lei had really forgotten about the Yi family. Otherwise, he would not have agreed to let the Yi family enter Changyang Mountain the moment Guhan mentioned the Yi family. That was why Guhan's expression darkened when he heard Yi Wenjun's words. You're too extreme. Yuzhong City has never forgotten about the Yi family. It's the Yi family that is too useless. Just a moment ago, Guhan was comforting Yi Wenjun. Now, he did not hesitate to poke at Yi Wenjun's sore spot. You should not resent the Sword Council. You should resent your own strength. If you really have the determination to revive the Yi family, then prove the Sword Council's mistake with your actions. With that, Guhan left the room unceremoniously and sat on a chair near the window to enjoy the scenery. Yi Wenjun sat in silence for a while before sighing. This Mr. Guhan isn't as old as I am, but he speaks as if he's my ancestor. I can't even refute a single word of his. How embarrassing! But Mr. Gu is right. Our Yi family is mostly to blame for this. I, Yi Wenjun, may be cowardly, weak and a crybaby, but I, Yi Wenjun, will bring the Yi family back to the top of Yuzhong City. Sooner or later, the position of the chairman of the Sword Committee will return to the Yi family. Wenjun's eyes burned with ambition. He's out. Song Yifei was already waiting for Guhan at the table by the window. Guhan ignored her and placed the sleeping Qingpin on the table. He knocked on Qingpin's head and said, "Qingpin, get up and eat meat." Meat. When Qingpin heard the word meat, he immediately sat up and hugged Guhan's face. Meat, Qingpin wants meat. Guhan, hurry up and give Qingpin meat. Qingpin is starving. Okay. Guhan said good 3 times in a row, and then took out a huge plastic bucket and a basin from the dimensional space. With a move of his mind, a sword chi dug out a large lump of braised pork from the bucket and put it all into the basin. Here, this is today's portion. Eat it. Hey, stingy Guhan, it's not enough for Qingpin at all. Qingpin muttered, but he still quickly grabbed a large piece of braised pork and stuffed it into his mouth. Within a few minutes, half of the braised pork in the basin was in Qingpin's stomach. This. Song Yifei was so surprised that she couldn't close her mouth. This was the first time that she saw Qingpin eat. Such a generous way of eating completely stunned Song Yifei. Amitabha, I've sinned. Hanya, who was standing behind Song Yifei, shouted the name of Buddha. It seemed that she was dissatisfied with Qingpin's behavior of eating meat. This was not strange. After all, Hanya was a nun. Amitabha, benefactor Guhan, can you let me eat some too? I haven't eaten meat for hundreds of years. Unexpectedly, after saying Amitabha, Hanya actually asked Guhan for meat. This time, it was Guhan's turn to be surprised. Soon after, Yi Tian and Ming Yuan also walked over, each of them digging out a large lump of red braised meat from the bucket. In the time it took for a meal, a quarter of the full bucket of red braised meat was gone. This is not enough for you. Guhan smiled bitterly. The braised pork he prepared was almost exclusively for Qingpin, but now, he had 3 more mouths. Helpless, Guhan could only ladle a bowl of rice for himself and cover it with vegetables and oil. Guhan couldn't bear to take another bite of the braised pork. I'm sorry, I didn't know that sword ladies like to eat meat, so I didn't prepare such things. I only brought some simple dishes. Song Yifei had an apologetic look on her face. Then, she took out her simple dishes. There were boiled vegetables, freshly squeezed apple juice, cucumber slices, and so on. It was indeed very simple and elegant. No wonder Song Yifei's sword lady came to eat with Guhan. Who is that Wenjun? Why are you so concerned about him? Song Yifei asked again while the two of them were eating. This time, Guhan didn't refuse to answer. Instead, he told her everything in detail. I didn't expect him to be a descendant of Zhetian Jiendi, and a descendant of Zhetian Jiendi in such a miserable state. Song Yifei sighed and didn't say anything else. She didn't have any special feelings for Zhetian Jiendi, so she was quite calm. Unlike Guhan, there were many things that were tied to Zhetian Jiendi. To solve the mystery of Zhetian Jiendi's descendant was a very important clue. Are you really going to sleep with them tonight? Song Yifei was actually more concerned about Guhan's accommodation. Aren't you 3 men ashamed of yourselves squeezing together? Song Yifei said with a smile. It was as if she could see Guhan being squeezed into a sandwich with 3 men. Then what should I do? How about I stay in your room? Guhan joked casually. Okay. Unexpectedly, Song Yifei came up with such an answer. Ha! Guhan raised his head and stared at Song Yifei's face, which was as red as an apple. He nodded decisively and said, Okay, let's do that. Plop. Song Yifei's head almost fell on the bowl of cucumber in front of her. What was this? According to the script, as the innocent male lead, shouldn't he reject her decisively? Song Yifei felt that he had dug a pit for himself for no reason, and then Guhan had pushed him into the pit. Is it good or not? Guhan smiled, and the look in his eyes made Song Yifei feel wronged. Okay, it's settled. Song Yifei confirmed again. She was a girl who was good at seizing opportunities. Damn, the young people nowadays are advancing so fast. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit, who was watching the couple through the surveillance system in the car, couldn't help but sigh. The world had changed, and people's hearts were not what they used to be. Back then, it took him a few months just to hold hands with his wife. However, it seemed that they had sex the night they held hands. It seemed like the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit was faster. Chapter 357. During the rest of the journey, the hovering bus encountered several more Yuan-Kos. However, these Yuan-Kos were all below the ghost grade, and it was not difficult to deal with the ancient sword-bearers. Thus, the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit chose to ignore these Yuan-Kos. The hovering bus continued to advance at high speed. Just as the sky was about to turn dark, the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit suddenly used the internal broadcast to ask everyone, "Since all of you are the cream of the crop among our Yuzhang City's artifact sword-bearers, then let me ask you, do you know where we should stop and set up camp?" The wilderness at night was far more dangerous than during the day. It was probably due to the dimensional rift, but the radar range of the hovering bus at night was extremely small. Just by relying on the headlights, one could only clearly see a small area in front of the bus. It was impossible to clearly see the enemies on both sides of the bus. More importantly, the hovering bus with the headlights on at night was like a piece of cake that emitted a tempting aroma, attracting all of the Yuan-Ko's attention. Thus, the Sword Committee had warned the sword-bearers countless times that they had to find a place to set up camp at night. It did not matter if they stayed in the bus or in a tent, but they could not travel through the night. If they were not careful, they would be devoured by the night. Seeing that the sky was about to turn completely dark, the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit had to find a place to stop and set up the hovering bus. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit used this question to test Gohan and the others. It was also indirectly teaching them knowledge about camping in the wilderness in the future. "I know." Song Yifei was the first to raise his hand and answer. "We have to choose a place that is leeward from the wind. This way, our scent will not be detected by Yuan-Ko. We also have to choose a place with a stable dimensional wall. This way, it will not be easy for dimensional rifts to appear nearby. That's right, we have to choose a place with a flat and wide field of vision. This way, even at night, we will be able to clearly see the surroundings and make it easier for us to escape." Song Yifei listed out a long list of methods and conditions for choosing a camping spot in one go. Gohan was very clear about these things, as they were clearly written in high school textbooks. They were the passages that students were forced to memorize. Every morning, the teachers would randomly select a few students to memorize these things. If they failed, they would naturally suffer. Not bad. Song Yifei, it seems that you must have done very well in the exam. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit smiled faintly. Its tone was a little strange. Obviously, it did not agree with Song Yifei's answer. Sometimes we may not have the time to judge these specific conditions, so do you know how to choose the right campsite as quickly as possible? Song Yifei was a bit stumped. These things weren't taught in the book. Song Yifei didn't know anything at all. Then, Song Yifei looked at Gu Han with hope in his eyes, hoping that Gu Han would be able to answer his question. Logically speaking, Gohan really didn't know the correct answer to this question. However, after thinking for a while, the answer surfaced in his mind. Just as he was about to answer this question, a cold and emotionless voice interrupted Gohan's answer. "Just look for the camps that have been used by the predecessors, you idiot." Ku Rock-in walked out of his room and answered the question coldly before returning to his room. "This person must be a psycho." Song Yifei looked at Ku Rock-in with dissatisfaction as he slammed the door and muttered, "He came out just to answer this question in front of me? Even if he wants to show off, he shouldn't do it like this. There's no benefit in answering correctly." "Who said there's no benefit?" The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit sneered. "Since Ku Rock-in's answer is correct, you can have a good rest when we camp at night. As for you two, Gohan will be responsible for the night patrol during the first half of the night, and Song Yifei will be responsible for the second half of the night. Well, after a few words, Gohan and Song Yifei were assigned to patrol the night. This was a very hard job. They couldn't sleep for half of the night. Within a radius of 500 kilometers around Yuzhong City, sword-bearers were very active in Yuzhong City. Almost every inch of land had been stepped on by sword-bearers in the past 1,000 years. Therefore, there were many traces left by sword-bearers in these places. This was what Ku-Rakin meant by the best and easiest way to choose a campsite. They just had to find a place with the most traces of campsites nearby and set up camp. These places had been carefully selected by the previous sword-bearers. The more marks there were, the more sword-bearers had camped here, and the safer it was. Directly choosing this place was far faster than trying to determine whether Shun Feng or Li Feng would come. This was also a kind of wisdom left behind by the predecessors. The eagle-cat sword spirit finally chose a high ground with its back against a cliff as a campsite. There were many traces left by sword-bearers here, and a large area nearby was filled with all kinds of plastic bags, packaging bags, and all kinds of rubbish. Well, the more rubbish, the safer it was. The next day, after Gohan left, he would also leave rubbish here to tell people that it was indeed a safe place. After the hovercraft stopped, the original white body of the car began to change color. Like a chameleon, it could adjust its skin color according to the surrounding environment, perfectly blending into the surrounding environment. Unless one looked closely at it from a close distance, or directly judged by its aura, normal Yuan Ko would not be able to detect that there was a hovercraft parked here. After the campsite was settled, it was free time. If Gohan was in the mood, he could take a walk around and enjoy the magnificent scenery outside the city. Unfortunately, Gohan was not in the mood. Only Song Yifei walked around excitedly, then returned to his room and talked to Gohan about how beautiful the scenery outside was. Wait, you asked Gohan why he was in Song Yifei's room? Was there a need to ask? Didn't it say in the previous chapter? Gohan wanted to sleep in Song Yifei's room. Gohan was a good man of his word. He would never reject a gift that was delivered to his door. Are you done? Song Yifei talked for a long time, but Gohan did not answer a word. This made Song Yifei feel a little bored, so he could only snort angrily. I'm done. Well, I'm going to sleep. I still have to patrol in the first half of the night. You should rest early too. The second half of the night is the most tiring. After saying this, Gohan did not hesitate to lie on Song Yifei's bed. He hugged Qingpin, who had long fallen asleep, and fell asleep together. Since Qingpin, this cute guy, left Yuzhong City, the amount of time he slept began to increase. For example, for the whole day, except for a while when he ate meat at noon, he was asleep for the rest of the day. Hey, you're sleeping like this. Seeing that Gohan was really sleeping soundly on his bed, and seemed to have deliberately left half of the space for him, Song Yifei's heart palpitated. What was wrong with him today? Why did he agree to this man's inexplicable request? He was going to die, 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 he was going to die. Then the question is, should I lie down or not? Song Yifei's heart began to struggle. No, I can't lie down. If I lie down, what am I? My reputation will be ruined, but I've already promised him. I can't go back on my word. Otherwise, I'll just lie down for a while. We're not doing anything. We're pure. With this in mind, Song Yifei's body slowly descended. His butt leaned against the bed, and then he immediately bounced up as if the bed was some kind of hot pot. No, it's too shameful. I can't do it, but maybe this won't happen again. It's impossible to lie down together in the future. Oh my God, Song Yifei, what are you thinking about? Why are you worrying about the future? Do you really want to live with him in the future? He's 8 years younger than you. So, if I miss this village, there won't be another shop like this. Just let me have some good memories. The two angels in Song Yifei's heart kept entangling with each other, and Song Yifei could not make a decision. Seeing that time was about to pass, Song Yifei finally decided to use his killer move. Well, I'll look at the time on my personal terminal. If the number of minutes is an odd number, I'll stay away from him. If it's an odd number, I'll lie down. This was Song Yifei's usual solution when he was in a dilemma. He would leave his fate to God and let God decide what to do. At this time, Song Yifei did not know whether the number of minutes was an odd number or an even number. Therefore, Song Yifei carefully clicked on his personal terminal, and the interface of his personal terminal immediately popped up. In the upper left corner of this interface, a small string of time was particularly eye-catching. 20:41. Song Yifei clearly saw the time. The number of minutes clearly showed that it was 41 minutes, which was an odd number. According to Song Yifei's own promise, if it was an odd number, he would stay away from Guhan and refuse to lie down with him. This doesn't count. This is an experiment. This is the first time. Unexpectedly, Song Yifei's expression immediately changed, and he took back the projection of his personal terminal. Next time counts. Well, no matter whether we believe Song Yifei's words or not, Song Yifei believed it herself. She decided to wait a little longer this time to make the time more uncertain. Therefore, she silently counted 60 numbers in her heart, and immediately projected the interface of her personal terminal. 20:43. Seeing the time, Song Yifei cursed in his heart. Humph, how can a real sword wielder be bound by these fake times? We should respect our true thoughts in our hearts. Song Yifei immediately found a new reason for himself, and it was a very noble one. That's right, I should respect my true thoughts in my heart. Song Yifei, just lie down. The result was the same as last time. As soon as Song Yifei's butt touched the bed, she bounced up again. No, I still need God to decide for me. Song Yifei quickly clicked on his personal terminal again and projected the interface. 20:44. Song Yifei finally let out a long sigh of relief. Song Yifei, this is God's decision. You can't go against God's will. Then, Song Yifei very happily lay down next to Guhan without any hesitation. This was the will of the heavens. Chapter 358. The moment she laid down beside Guhan, Song Yifei smelled a rich milky fragrance. This smell was so magical, just like a mother's breast milk. Why did it sound so weird? Strange, why would a man like Guhan have this smell? Song Yifei sniffed again. Although she had no idea why Guhan's body would have a milky fragrance, this smell was so sweet that Song Yifei's whole body felt relaxed, and she couldn't help but want to fall asleep. Slap! Song Yifei patted her face lightly. It was so embarrassing that she actually almost fell asleep. If I can be with Guhan in the future, at least I won't have to worry about insomnia. Song Yifei thought in a daze. No, this is too strange for a man to have this milky fragrance. Where is this fragrance coming from? Song Yifei thought so, and her little nose involuntarily rubbed against Guhan's back. She stuck to Guhan's clothes and began to sniff, like a puppy that kept sniffing for meat and bones. This look was so cute. Do I look like a pervert? After sniffing for a long time, Song Yifei suddenly realized how shameful her behavior was, and suddenly blushed. A girl sniffing around a man's body, no matter how she looked at it, looked like a crazy girl with insatiable desires. Just when Song Yifei felt extremely ashamed and was about to stop this crazy girl behavior, a rich milky fragrance suddenly came to her face and went straight to her nose. "And Yifei, what are you doing?" Song Yifei was shocked when she heard this. She looked up and saw Qingpin staring at Song Yifei with her big eyes full of curiosity. "And Yifei, why are you asking about Guhan's body?" It turned out that the milky fragrance was coming from Qingpin's body. When Qingpin poked his head out to talk to Song Yifei knew that the source of the milk fragrance was Qingpin, because when Qingpin spoke, the smell floated out of his mouth. Like I said, Gu-han is a big man, how can there be a milky smell on his body? Oh, I think I smell bugs, so I want to see if there are any bugs on Gu-han. Song Yifei thought of a lame excuse, but he had no choice. It was impossible for him to come up with a reasonable explanation in just a few seconds, given his intelligence. There are bugs on Gu-han's body. Qingpin was startled by Song Yifei. She immediately crawled all over Gu-han's body and opened Gu-han's mouth to smell the smell inside. Auntie Yifei, there are no bugs. Ahem, maybe Auntie Yifei smelled it wrong, Song Yifei said. But soon, she felt that something was wrong. Since when did she become an auntie? Qingpin, why did you call Yifei auntie? Song Yifei took Qingpin off Gu-han's body. In order to get the correct answer, Song Yifei took out something to tempt Qingpin. Qingpin, there is a big bag of beef jerky in Yifei's bag. If you tell Yifei, Yifei will give you the whole bag of beef jerky. Really? Qingpin's eyes lit up. This cute girl was always immune to meat. It was Gu-han who told Qingpin. Qingpin immediately put the blame on Gu-han. Qingpin asked Gu-han how to call Yifei, and then Gu-han asked me to call you Auntie Yifei, saying that it was a sign of respect for the elders. That's weird. Qingpin is millions of years old. Is Auntie Yifei tens of millions of years old? Qingpin was just making it up. Gu-han had never talked about Song Yifei with Qingpin. It was Qingpin's own idea. Although Qingpin was cute, he was not stupid. He could not say that he came up with the title of auntie. It must have been taught by the annoying Gu-han to Qingpin. Qingpin was innocent. Beef jerky. Beef jerky. Qingpin answered the question. Qingpin wants to eat beef jerky. After Qingpin answered the question, he immediately pinched a piece of meat on Song Yifei's face, indicating that Song Yifei should fulfill her promise. Okay, I'll give it to you now. Song Yifei took out a handful of beef jerky from her dimensional space. She had spent thousands of yuan to buy it as a snack, but it all ended up in Qingpin's hands. Oh, Qingpin went to play with Gu Yun. At night, Qingpin became energetic. He skipped out of Song Yifei's room and ran to Gu-han's room to play with Gu Yun. Speaking of Gu Yun, ever since she got the small dagger from Tojo Kiki, she had been playing with it on the bed. She did not even come out for dinner. She just stayed in the room quietly. Originally, Gu-han had planned to take Gu Yun to sleep in Song Yifei's room, but no matter how hard Gu-han shouted, Gu Yun would not move. So, he had to let her be. Gu Yun was in a daze in Gu-han's room. Qingpin went to play with Gu Yun. Hanya was meditating on the grass outside the bus. Itian had hidden somewhere to drink. Miraculously, only Gu-han and Song Yifei were left in Song Yifei's room. Was this the legendary sleeping together? Song Yifei could not help but lean closer to Gu-han's position. Then, she put her arm on Gu-han's waist to feel Gu-han's body temperature. Then, she took a deep breath. There was no milk fragrance, but a faint sweat smell. This was the smell of a man. Song Yifei began to regret it. In fact, it was good for Qingpin to stay here. Her milk fragrance could cover up the sweat smell on Gu-han's body. The battle at noon had more or less made Gu-han sweat. This bus did not have a luxurious design for people to take a shower. As a sword bearer, he could just find a pond to take a shower. 1,000 years after the apocalypse, the only thing that had significantly improved on Earth was its environment. All the streams and rivers had basically recovered their clarity. Bathing in these waters might even be cleaner than tap water. However, this faint sweat smell made Song Yifei's heart palpitate. She did not know what was going on, but some kind of fire that Song Yifei had calmed down for more than 20 years had suddenly ignited. First, she felt her face heat up. Then, waves of heat kept rolling in her body. Gradually, this heat gathered in Song Yifei's lower body. A certain place began to become wet. The liquid that seemed to be there and not there hooked onto Song Yifei's delicate skin, making half of her body itch. Heavens! What's wrong with me? I just smelled a little sweat. Song Yifei felt that it was inconceivable for her body to be in such an uncontrollable state. She even suspected that she was a lewd woman. Otherwise, why would there be such a shameful result from just smelling a little sweat? Moreover, this feeling was getting stronger and stronger. In less than a few minutes, Song Yifei felt that her underwear was completely wet. If Song Yifei and Gohan were really boyfriend and girlfriend, then Song Yifei would definitely not hesitate to ride on Gohan's body, pull off his clothes, and then have sex with him. Unfortunately, Song Yifei and Gohan were not in a relationship. They just inexplicably lay together for some reason. Why don't I tempt him? If he knows what's good for him, then everything will be easy. Song Yifei had this thought in his mind. If sword wielders, especially those of the opposite sex, were to team up, it would be very easy for them to bond over a moment of sexual love in a battle of life and death, where they would be separated every day. Maybe they would die tomorrow, so there was nothing to be reserved about. If they could get together with the person they liked and live a happy day, what the hell was a chastity? It was precisely because of this way of thinking that most female swordswomen were quite open about their sexual relationship. Don't misunderstand, it wasn't the kind of open that was licentious. Rather, if they met a man they liked, they wouldn't try to be reserved or shy. Instead, they would unceremoniously start a great battle of love and action. Song Yifei had just become a sword-bearer for a few days, so she still maintained her reservation. If Song Yifei had been a sword-bearer for 7 or 8 years and became a wily old fox, she would not care about being shy anymore. She could directly pull off his clothes and have sex. Anyway, our Gohan is handsome, so there is no loss. But now, Song Yifei naturally could not do this. She decided to tease Gohan a little and let him take the initiative. This was not her not being reserved. This was completely the mentality of an ostrich. Even if Gohan really took the initiative, it was triggered by her teasing, okay? In short, Song Yifei's teasing plan began. She imitated some of the videos that she occasionally saw secretly. She kept her trembling hand on Gohan's back, and then slowly moved along the gap of his clothes, trying to enter his clothes and have intimate contact with the skin of Gohan's back. At the same time, Song Yifei's mouth slowly moved to Gohan's ear, and she stuck out her tongue. It seemed that she wanted to use her tongue to do something to Gohan's ear. Stick her tongue into Gohan's earhole? This idea was indeed a bit strange. Even Song Yifei herself hesitated for a long time. Finally, she could not resist the real itch coming from her lower body, and bravely stuck out her tongue. "What's wrong with you? Are you feeling hot because I'm here?" At this moment, Gohan suddenly turned around, and his back was facing Song Yifei. Then, Song Yifei's tongue licked Gohan's cheek, and her hand, which had not had time to reach into Gohan's clothes, froze in midair. "Haha, you're awake." Song Yifei did not know how to describe the embarrassment on her face. It was almost as if she wanted to die. "I'm hot, so I stuck out my tongue to dissipate the heat." "Well, it's very late. Etienne and the others can't be too far away from the campsite. I'm going to find them, and then we'll start patrolling the first half of the night. Have a good rest, we'll change shifts at 3 in the morning." After saying this, Gohan jumped up from Song Yifei's bed, and left Song Yifei's room without looking back. Idiot, bitch. After Gohan left, Song Yifei covered her head, and no one knew whether she was scolding Gohan or herself. Chapter 359. Gohan sat quietly on the roof of the bus. He was wearing a cloak with a color-changing invisibility effect, perfectly blending into the night. The moonlight was especially bright today. Under the moonlight, Gohan could clearly observe the movements in the plains in the distance. As soon as Yuan Ko appeared, Gohan would be able to warn him in advance. It was already around 10 o'clock in the morning. Hanya and Ming Yuan had already returned to the bus to rest. Only Etienne was leaning against the cliff of the bus, completely drunk. Gohan didn't know that the sword lady could also get drunk to this extent. The sword lady's body structure was completely different from a human's. Logically speaking, the sword lady would never get drunk. But in reality, if the sword lady drank too much, she would also get drunk. However, the sword lady could choose to force all the alcohol out of her body, just like Duan Yu and Xiao Feng did when they drank. However, Yi Tian actually swallowed all the alcohol into her stomach without holding back. Trash. Trash. You all owe me. The drunk Yi Tian uttered these words in a distressed manner. It seemed that many unhappy things must have happened to Yi Tian in her previous life. Just what kind of unhappy things could have caused a sword lady like Yi Tian to have such an eccentric personality, and to also like to drink? Never mind, Gohan didn't plan on delving into Yi Tian's inner world. He wasn't interested. Time passed slowly. Gohan was multitasking. He controlled the sword essence in his body to circulate through his meridians, trying to open up the remaining acupuncture points one by one and recultivate the 9 swords of mysterious heaven. At the same time, he was vigilantly observing his surroundings. An outstanding sword wielder was definitely someone who paid the most attention to their own safety. What move did you use this afternoon? Suddenly, Kurakin's figure landed beside Gohan. He stood behind Gohan. Gohan could tell from his tone that when he said this, his head was raised high and he was extremely arrogant. I don't need to answer your question, Gohan replied in a cold and detached manner. At the same time, he silently withdrew the sword essence that was circulating in his body into his Z palace. During cultivation, the sword wielder was at his weakest. Any external attack could cause Gohan to go berserk. Although Gohan did not think that Kurakin had any evil intentions, he still carefully withdrew his sword element. Even if you don't say it, I've already guessed it. You just drew some kind of formation on the outer shell of the transformer, right? Kurakin sneered. This guy is quite capable. He actually saw through it. Gohan's impression of Kurakin had risen by a lot because of these words. He could actually tell that he had drawn a formation on the Transformer's body, allowing him to kill the Leopard Commander. This was a very remarkable point, and it was absolutely impossible to see this point without shrewd insight and creativity. Gohan estimated that among all the sword wielder of the treasure sword grade, the number of people who could see this definitely did not exceed the number of fingers on one hand. The only thing that I don't understand is, what kind of formation did you draw? What kind of method did you use to activate the formation? Tell me, what exactly is the reason? Kurakin questioned bluntly. This is my unique skill and also my secret. Do you think I will tell you? Why should I tell you? Gohan's tone was full of mockery. Just because you are Sword Immortal Baiju's son, do I have to tell you? I don't need that stinky old man's bad reputation. Hearing Gohan mention Sword Immortal Baiju's name, Kurakin became a little irritated. Clearly, he did not like people calling him Sword Immortal Baiju's son. Every Chunibyu youth was like this. They did not want their success to be built on the help of their parents' generation. For example, before the apocalypse, a certain Sikong had always been active on Weibo, esports, and all sorts of joke. He did his best to increase his popularity, unlike the other second-generation heirs who liked to silently make a fortune. The reason why a certain Sikong did this was because he wanted to prove that his success did not depend on his father, but on his own hard work and talent. He could also use 20 million to earn 500 million without the help of his father's generation. This was actually a joke. Just the title of the richest man's son alone could easily turn 20 million into 500 million. The financial industry was always full of such myth. However, one had to admit that a certain Sikong was indeed talented. At the very least, he was much better than those poor people who spent most of their time writing at their desk. Back to Kurakin. Kurakin really did not want to use Wu Dao's name to pressure Gohan, so he simply said to Gohan, "Let's make a deal. You tell me how you activated the formation, and I will give you 100 sword scar crystals." What do you think? It's a good deal, right? Your heaven-reliant sword hasn't been deepened yet, right? My 100 sword scar crystals should be enough for your heaven-reliant sword to deepen to the 7th grade. This is worth tens of thousands of hero coins in the shop. 200. Gohan was not pretentious. He would be a fool not to earn money. Take it. Kurakin looked at Gohan and smiled mockingly. He gave 200 sword scar crystals to Gohan. These sword scar crystals were worth up to 20,000 hero coins, which could allow an ancient sword wielder to live a carefree life for 30 years. This was also what Wenjun had earned by guarding the beacon tower for 4 months. However, Kurakin did not care about giving these things away just for a secret. Gohan did not care about Kurakin's mockery. After putting the sword scar crystals into his bag, Gohan calmly told him the secret of this move. That's right. When Gohan fought Commander Leopard, those seemingly meaningless sword scars were actually a formation drawn on Commander Leopard's body. This formation was called the Metal Transformation Formation. It was derived from the Golden Light Formation, one of the 10 heavenly lords of the Thunder Division in the Eastern Celestial World. The 10 heavenly lords of the Thunder Division were all fallen realm Yuan Ko. They were originally 10 celestial immortal lords of the Jie School. Later, they sought death by blocking Jiang Zia's way and setting up the famous 10 Extreme Formation. In the end, they all died and became gods. Although the 10 heavenly lords were not very capable, it was said that their formation was derived from the Immortal Eliminating Sword diagram in sect leader Tongtian's Immortal Eliminating Sword diagram. The formation itself was a very powerful formation. In the previous battles between the sword wielder and the Eastern Celestial World, 4 of the 10 heavenly lords had fallen at the hands of the sword wielder. The formation in their hands had also been leaked. However, the 10 Extreme Formation required immortal power to use. Humans had no use for it, so it was treated as public information and put on the internet for all to read. Later, a great grandmaster, Gong Shu Er, had a sudden idea. He combined the mysteries of the natural sword diagram that could make the sword Maiden form a formation and invented a formation that could be activated by sword essence. The Metal Transformation Formation was one of them. This formation could melt metal and turn it into a pile of waste. It was one of the best formations to deal with metal-type Yuan Ko. However, the method to use this formation was very strict. It had to be drawn on a special formation in advance. Then, special ink made from dimensional crystal powder was used to draw it on the formation. To use it, Yuan Ko had to step on the formation to trigger it. Otherwise, it would just be a piece of paper. However, Gohan found another way. He used the blade of the sword Maiden as a pen and the body of a transformer as a formation. He forcibly drew a metal transformation formation on Commander Leopard's body. After hearing Gohan's explanation, Kurakin rudely interrupted, "You didn't use the special sword essence graphite ink, and the ink can't condense into lines on smooth metal. This formation can't be triggered." "Did I say that I used ink?" Gohan snorted coldly. "The fire seed of a transformer is the best ink. Scientists have long discovered that the tinder of the transformers is actually an amalgamation of the sword element. In other words, they are the same existence as the sword lady in a sense. They also rely on the sword element to drive their bodies. Therefore, their bodies are already covered in sword essence. They don't need any ink at all. As long as I draw the lines of the formation, I can use the fire seed of a transformer to burn themselves to death." Gohan's words made Kurakin somewhat amazed and speechless. He was amazed because this was indeed the strongest killer move against a transformer. As long as the formation could be completely drawn, even the strongest transformer, the universe-level Yuan Ko Optimus Prime, could only die. As long as the battle was right, a spirit sword-level sword wielder could also use this ultimate move to kill a universe-level Yuan Ko. Therefore, this was worthy of Kurakin's amazement. The reason why he was speechless was that the number of transformers was very small and they rarely appeared. Therefore, he didn't know much about transformers. He didn't even know 1/10 or 1/20 of Gohan. He didn't even know that the fire seed of a transformer was actually an amalgamation of sword essence. Therefore, it was impossible for him to guess that Gohan used this method to trigger the formation. But this ultimate move can only be used to deal with transformers. Kurakin thought for a moment and immediately discovered the drawback of Gohan's ultimate move. There are less than 20 known transformers in the world, and the chance of a sword wielder meeting one in their lifetime is less than 1%. You've painstakingly researched this ultimate move, but there are no transformers for you to kill. Isn't it a waste? This ultimate move is too weak. Thank you for your concern. My luck is very good. This is my second time encountering transformers. I believe that encountering them for the third time won't be too far off. This move of mine will become the final nightmare of their lives. After listening to Gohan's explanation, Kurakin was silent for a moment. Then, he narrowed his eyes and said, "From now on, I admit that you are a strong opponent. I will be waiting for your challenge." "Why can't I be the one waiting for your challenge?" Gohan laughed. "Because my sword essence has exceeded 10,000 points." Kurakin smiled happily. "This time, when I return from Chongyang Mountain, I will synchronize with my famous sword Maiden. I have already prepared the hero coin. Yanjing City is waiting for me." Yanjing City. Gohan's ears twitched. "Why go to Yanjing City? Shouldn't you go to Yuzhang City first? The sword Maiden I want can only be found in Yanjing City. I don't like any of the ones in Yuzhang City," Gulvren said disdainfully. Indeed, it was different from the sword ladies of the treasure sword level, where heroes gathered. There was indeed no sword lady of the famous sword level in Yuzhang City. The truly good sword ladies of the famous sword level were all kept in the sword pavilion in Yanjing City. When Gohan had accumulated 10,000 quarks of sword essence, she would also go to Yanjing City to look for her own sword lady of the famous sword level, the sword of Gojian King of Yu that he had promised her. In the whole world, only Lord Kanzu is my, Kurakin's, idol. I, Kurakin, will definitely follow in Lord Kanzu's footsteps and once again stand at the peak of this world. Unfortunately, the Yi-Xian sword is missing, and the Yuchang sword is already taken when I synchronize with my famous sword. This time, the sword of Yu King Gojian will definitely be in my, Kurakin's, pocket. Chapter 360. Kurakin's idol was Kanzu's fleeting time calendar. With his Chunibyu personality, only Kanzu's achievements were worthy of his attention. So this Chunibyu's life goal was to have a sword maiden that was exactly like Kanzu. Fleeting time calendar's ancient sword maiden was the Yi-Xian sword. This sword had always been in the burial grounds, and only the sword pavilion masters knew where it was. For the Yi-Xian sword, Kurakin had to endure the disgust to find his father, Zhu Wudao, and ask him to help him find the Yi-Xian sword. In the end, Zhu Wudao and Lu Lei talked for a long time, but Lu Lei refused to tell Zhu Wudao. Therefore, Julvren hated his father even more. Julvren could not possibly waste his time on the Yi-Xian sword, so he had no choice but to synchronize with another sword mistress, who was also one of the top rankers among the ancient swords. Then, he hoped that he would be able to synchronize with the Yuchang sword when he was a treasured sword. Unfortunately, the Yuchang sword had already been synchronized with by Qi unless Kurakin killed by Qi. He would not be able to get the Yuchang sword. Although Julvren was a severely delusional patient, he would never do something as rebellious as killing someone and snatching a sword. Everyone in the world would punish him for it. At that time, Bai Qi looked like he had at least a few decades left to live. Kurakin naturally could not wait for Bai Qi to die, so he had no choice but to find another sword maiden to experiment with. Naturally, Juluren had tried the heavenly sword as well. Unfortunately, Heavenly Sword did not react to him at all. As a result, when Gu Han obtained the Heavenly Sword, Zhu Luren felt an indescribable jealousy. Since he had failed to get the Ancient and Sword Maidens, Ku Rokin set his sights on the famed sword, Yu King Sword. Ku Rokin had already found out that the Yu King Sword was lying quietly in Yanjing City's Sword Pavilion. There was no sword wielder who could synchronize with her. As for whether or not he could successfully coordinate with the Yu King Gojinjian, that was not within Ku Rokin's consideration. In the eyes of Sophomore Syndrome, everything in the world was prepared for him. As long as he stood before his target, the target would obediently fly into his hand. Come to think of it, Gohan was quite suitable for this situation. Fearing that someone would snatch the Gojian sword, the king of Yu, Zhu Ren fought with all his might to accumulate his sword essences. Yesterday, he finally broke through the limit of 10,000 sword essences. Just as he was about to set off for Yanjing City to find the king of Yu, Zhu Wudao's order for him to go to Changyang Mountain happened to arrive. That was why Ku Rokin was so against it. He even wanted to reject Wudao's order, but in the end, he was forced to join the team. He had already made up his mind. Once the matter at Changyang Mountain was over, he would not even return to Yuzhong City. He would follow Liuyan Ling to Yanjing City to find his Yu King Gojinjian. After Ku Rokin got the answer he wanted to know, he completely lost interest in talking to Gohan. He jumped off the car and returned to the bus. Hearing that Ku Rokin's goal was the Yu King Gojinjian, Gohan's calm heart started to panic. His sword element was only around 1,000 points. He was still around 8,000 points away from synchronizing with the Yu King. In a short period of time, it was impossible for him to catch up to Ku Rokin. Therefore, Ku Rokin would definitely be able to synchronize with the Yu King before him. Previously, Gohan was not worried that someone would take the Yu King away before him. However, after seeing Ku Rokin, Gohan's heart started to throb. A voice seemed to be telling Gohan that Ku Rokin might succeed. He would take the Yu King away. The Yu King's love for Gohan was limited to the game. In reality, the sleeping Yu King did not know Gohan at all. Naturally, he would not open a backdoor for Gohan and let Gohan take him away. It was not impossible for Ku Rokin to take the Yu King away. Looks like I have to speed up. If the Yu King falls into someone else's hands, I, Gohan, will be nothing. Gohan's heart started to throb. The Yu King was Gohan's. This was something that could not be changed. The night passed uneventfully. Without Yuan Ko coming to disturb them, Gohan waited until 3 o'clock. He did not see Song Yifei come over to take over his shift. However, Gohan didn't rush her. Instead, he just waited on the roof of the car silently. It wasn't until 4 o'clock that Song Yifei came to Gohan expressionlessly. Move! Song Yifei pushed Gohan and sat in Gohan's position. She looked at the long night without saying a word. In fact, Song Yifei waited until this time to appear. Song Yifei woke up at 3 o'clock. In other words, she had never fallen asleep. After Gohan left the room, Song Yifei could no longer suppress her desire. She reached her hand into her crotch and rubbed it for a long time. Then, she collapsed and laid on the bed like a pile of mud. After the water in her lower body was discharged, she could no longer suppress the water in her upper body. A large amount of tears flowed out of Song Yifei's eyes. Everything that happened just now made Song Yifei feel extremely ashamed when she recalled it. What was even more shameful was Gohan's resolute attitude of leaving. What was this? After flirting with her, he threw her aside? She was like Gohan's toy? Was Gohan so unfond of her? Did he hate her that much? She had humiliated herself to such an extent, and this was the result she got. More importantly, Song Yifei could be sure that Gohan had never thought of him at all. Everything was just an illusion of her wishful thinking. When the illusion was broken, all that was left was a forcefully hardened shell. Only a shell made of indifference could protect Song Yifei's fragile self-esteem at this time. Of course, Gohan did not understand this. He did not even know what the things he did meant. Gohan was far less talented in love than he was in fighting. The reason why he agreed to share a room with Song Yifei was purely because he wanted to test if 3 strikes of Green Lotus would have any different effect on a sword maiden or a human. Practice proved that 3 strikes of Green Lotus had almost the same effect on a sword maiden or a human. When Song Yifei smelled Gohan's scent through Gohan's clothes, Gohan had already started to react. In the end, when Song Yifei was about to tease Gohan, Gohan felt that his lower body was about to be exposed. Only then did he decisively leave Song Yifei's bed. It was because Gohan did not want Song Yifei to see him embarrassed. "Your eyes are swollen. Did you not sleep well last night?" Gohan raised his head and saw Song Yifei's red and swollen eyes. There were faint traces of tears on them. "You cried the whole night?" "No. I had a nightmare. I cried in the dream." Song Yifei forced herself to sleep. "You didn't cry because of me, did you?" Gohan immediately saw through Song Yifei's disguise. "Have you fallen in love with me?" Song Yifei asked. "What?" Gohan asked. "No, never. Who would fall in love with an idiot like you? You're a pervert." Song Yifei was a bit flustered. She did not expect Gohan to say these things without hesitation. As a model of an aloof Prince Charming, shouldn't Gohan be even more aloof and disdainful of things like relationships? Whatever. Gohan stood up and was about to leave the roof. "You can fall in love with me, but I can't promise that I'll fall in love with you." "You can fall in love with me, but I can't promise that I'll fall in love with you." "You can mate with me, and I promise that I won't reject you." "You can scold me, and I promise that I won't scold you." "You can hate me, and I promise that I won't hate you." I know that I'm a complete jerk for saying this, but I'm sorry. Before my life stops, I'll stay like this. I'll hide some things, but I don't like to hide things about relationship. Yifei, think about it carefully. But no matter what, I hope that we can still be friends. I don't have many friends, and you're my 3rd friend. I can promise you that. After saying this, Gohan disappeared from the roof, leaving Song Yifei sitting on the roof in a daze. "What is this? You want me to give up?" Song Yifei kept thinking about what Gohan had said just now. Song Yifei analyzed it over and over again, but he still couldn't figure out the reason. "Pfft, you said that you don't want to hide things about relationships, but in the end it's still so confusing. You can't understand anything." Song Yifei spat. But to her surprise, after hearing what Gohan had said, she felt a lot better. "Fine, let's be friends for now. If I want to find a man, I can find any handsome young man. Why would I hang myself on Gohan's tree?" Song Yifei stuck out his tongue and stared at the plains in the distance until the sun slowly rose from the horizon the next day. It seemed that tomorrow would be a good day again. The floating bus set off at 7 the next morning. After about 4 hours, it arrived at the last large stronghold in Yuzhong City, Yeyang Fortress. Yeyang Fortress was built along the river. It was built under the leadership of the Longevity Jiandi. It was about 1/30th the size of Yuzhong City. The Yuyang Fort was not a base city suitable for human habitation because it did not have a dimensional barrier. The defense of the Yuyang Fort was completely dependent on the sword-bearers. Throughout history, the Yuyang Fort had been conquered by the Yuan family at least 40 times. On average, it would fall every 10 years or so. A fort like that could not be used as a place for human habitation. Yeyang Fortress was a large supply point for the sword-bearers. The sword-bearers had to survive in the wilderness and kill Yuan Ko, which consumed a lot of resources. It was not practical to rely on Yuzhong City for supplies. It would take too long to go back and forth. That was why Yeyang Fortress was built. With Yeyang Fortress, the sword-bearers could move around in a larger area. At the same time, they could provide some warning to Yuzhong City. The bus would stop at Yeyang Fortress for 2 hours to buy some supplies and do some repairs. Chapter 361. According to the plan, Gohan and the others didn't need to enter Fort Yuyang to rest. They had only left Yuzhong City for less than a day, so they had plenty of supplies. It was enough for them to make a round trip from Chongyang Mountain. However, with the addition of Yi Wenjun, Gohan and the others had no choice but to enter Fort Yuyang. This was because Yi Wenjun's sword Maiden had been severely damaged in the battle with Commander Leopard. The blade of the sword had already been shattered to the hilt. With just one more light attack, this sword Maiden would probably break on the spot. Therefore, Yi Wenjun had to go to Jiangyin City and find a swordsmith to repair the broken sword. Otherwise, Yi Wenjun would be a complete burden, and he wouldn't be of any use in the Chongyang Mountain ruins. From afar, Fort Yuyang looked like a carambola, full of sharp edges and a murderous aura. The gate of Fort Yuyang was completely made of dimensional crystals, but it was very small. It was only 5 meters wide, 4 meters tall, and 2 meters thick. It couldn't even compare to the gates of some villas. However, because the gate was small, it could withstand Yuan Ko's powerful attacks. Even a U-realm Yuan Ko's attack could withstand hundreds or even thousands of attacks. The reason why the gate was small was to increase the strength of the defense, and it also prevented large vehicles from entering Fort Yuyang. There wasn't much space inside Fort Yuyang, and the streets were very narrow. There wasn't a parking lot either. Other than bicycles, all other vehicles were prohibited from entering. Gohan could only park the floating bus in the parking lot near the gate and walk into Fort Yuyang. As for the safety of the floating bus, there was no need to worry about it. Without thousands of Yuan Ko, they wouldn't even be able to get close to Fort Yuyang. Once there were so many Yuan Ko, there was no need to worry about vehicles anymore. Instead, they had to worry about the safety of Fort Yuyang and whether or not they could defend it. At the gate of Fort Yuyang, there was a strict inspection process. Not only did they have to check their gadgets, but they also had to check if they were humans and if they were sword ladies. Many Yuan Ko liked to disguise themselves as humans to enter various base cities and forts. They were originally humans in the other world. Using a CT scan alone, they were completely human. There was no way to distinguish them. Later, scientists discovered that Yuan Ko carried a special trace element. This was a trace element that would only appear in creatures that had passed through dimensional rift. By detecting this trace element, they were able to completely block out Yuan Ko. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit and Ku Rakin did not get out of the car. Only Gohan, Yi Wenjun, and Song Yifei entered the fortress. Originally, Gohan didn't plan to go to Yuyang Fort. However, because of Gu Yun, the food they prepared wasn't enough. Gohan needed to replenish some food in Yuyang Fort. Song Yifei was very curious about Fort Yuyang. It was her first time leaving Yuzhong City, so naturally, it was also her first time coming to Fort Yuyang. How could she let go of this opportunity to watch the show? After entering the fortress, Yi Wenjun and Gohan parted ways. He needed to repair his sword lady. The gathering place for swordsmiths was a small area in the east of the fortress, while Gohan bought food in the west. They were in completely opposite directions. There weren't many types of goods sold in the fortress. It wasn't a place for people to live a luxurious life. Instead, it was a place for swordsmiths to replenish themselves. Therefore, most of the goods sold were high in calories, nutrition, and could be eaten immediately. It was impossible to buy a large amount of red braised meat, which Qingpin liked to eat. Gohan didn't see anyone selling meat in the entire Fort Yuyang. This was a bit difficult. Gohan knocked on Qingpin's head in the pouch. "Hey Qingpin, I can't buy your red braised meat." Qingpin originally wanted to lie on the bed with Yi Tian and sleep soundly. She didn't want to follow Gohan into the fortress. However, when she heard that Gohan was planning to buy meat for her, she immediately became energetic. She stayed in Gohan's pouch and opened her eyes wide to look around. She wanted to see if there was anything that could make her, the adorable Qingpin, drool. Unfortunately, Qing Jiu and Guhan were the same. They went to a few shops and still couldn't find any meat. This was very disappointing. Qingpin looked around sadly. In the end, she happened to see a stall selling fried food at the foot of the city wall. Gohan there. Let's go there and take a look. Under Qingpin's guidance, Gohan found the stall selling fried food. He realized that the pan wasn't frying potatoes, sausages, or any other conventional fried food. What he was frying was a white thing that was as long and as thick as a finger. Sir, do you want to try it? This is the specialty of our Yuyang fortress. Crunch, crunch. The peddler eagerly introduced it to Yuyang. This thing is called crunchy? What kind of name is that? Does it taste good? Gohan asked. All right, you'll know if it tastes good or not after you try it. If it doesn't taste good, it's free. The vendor used his chopsticks to add a piece of white crispy and placed it in front of Gohan. Gohan ate it without hesitation. Well, it did feel dry and crispy in his mouth. This thing was wrapped in a layer of dough, so the outermost layer was especially crispy, just like the outer skin of a KFC chicken drumstick. The meat inside felt like tofu. It melted in the mouth and was very smooth. It tasted like a mixture of nuts and chicken. It was indeed a rare delicacy. How is it, Gohan? Is it delicious? Is it meat? Qingpin asked expectantly. The taste is not bad. It's quite delicious. Qingpin, you should try one too. Gohan picked up a piece and put it into Qingpin's mouth. Qingpin quickly ate it, then chewed it and swallowed it directly into his stomach. How can there be such delicious meat in this world? After eating a mouthful, Qingpin's eyes suddenly lit up and he stared at the pot of crispy meat. Saliva flowed out of his mouth uncontrollably, and all of it dripped into Gohan's nursery pouch. Gohan, buy all of it. Qingpin wants all of it. It's all Qingpin's. It's so delicious that Qingpin is dying. It seemed that this thing was infinitely attractive to Qingpin. Since Qingpin liked it, Gohan naturally would not be stingy. How much is it? I'll buy all of it, Gohan said generously. It's not expensive, 2,000 yuan per kilogram. There are 6 kilograms here. I'll sell it for 10,000 RMB. The peddler's face was full of smiles. This crispy noodle would normally not sell so well. Especially after knowing the source of the crispy noodle's main ingredient, very few people would buy it from him again. He was only able to deceive the new swordsman who came to Fort Yuyang for the first time and did not know the truth. It's really not expensive. Gohan inadvertently recalled the frog meat he had eaten in Miling. In terms of taste, it was not as delicious as this crispy meat. However, it cost 8,000 yuan per kilogram and 16,000 yuan per kilogram, which was 8 times more expensive than the whole crispy meat. It was only slightly more expensive than natural pork. I want all of it. Pack it up for me. Gohan swept away all of the peddler's crispy noises and left under the peddler's grateful gaze. Although Qingpin loved the crispy meat, it was only 6 kilograms after all. It was not enough for Qingpin to eat for one meal. Therefore, these crispy meat could only be defined as snack. There was no trace of it that could be used as a meal. Helpless, Gohan could only buy a lot of ham sausages from the supermarket. It was said that this thing was produced with a recipe from before the apocalypse, and half of the meat was in it. However, at a price of 500 yuan for 10 kilograms, Gohan did not believe that it was made of meat. Even if it was ordinary synthetic meat, 1 kilogram would cost 80 yuan, and 10 kilograms would cost 800 yuan. How could 10 kilograms of ham be cheaper than meat? Unexpectedly, Qingpin did not dislike the taste. Therefore, Gohan bought another 500 kilograms of ham sausages and put them all in his dimensional pocket. Only then did he feel that it was enough for Qingpin to eat along the way. On the other hand, Gohan's dimensional pocket was also filled with all kinds of food. The dimensional pocket of the sword bearers did not have a lot of space. It was only a few cubic meters. However, there were dimensional pockets with more space, ranging from 10 cubic meters to 1,000 cubic meters. They were sold on the market. However, those dimensional pockets were very expensive. The cheapest 10 cubic meters cost 5,000 hero coins. Gohan only had 1,000 hero coins on him. He could not afford a better dimensional pocket. However, it was not that Gohan could not afford it. If he handed over his Marquis Zergs to the Quest Center, he could exchange them for 20,000 hero coins. He would become rich instantly. After solving the problem of Chingpin's food problem, Gohan was about to return to the floating bus outside the fortress. Just as he was about to set off again, Gohan suddenly received a call from Iwenjun. "Mr. Gohan, there is a small problem. Can you help me?" Iwenjun's voice on the communicator was a little low and ashamed. It seemed that something embarrassing had happened to him. When Han Sun saw Iwenjun, he was sitting in front of a blacksmith shop. A muscular blacksmith was standing behind Iwenjun with a look of disdain. "F***ck, you don't have money, and yet you're here to repair a sword maiden. Why are you acting like a boss when you don't have money? What's going on?" Even if Gohan did not ask, he could guess the reason. Iwenjun was out of money. "I don't have enough money," Iwenjun stammered. "He wants 130,000 RMB, and I only have 50,000, so..." Iwenjun was so ashamed that he wanted to find a hole to hide in. 130,000? Gohan frowned. Repairing a sword maiden won't cost more than 50,000 RMB anywhere. "Boss, why are you taking 130,000 from my friend? For normal damages, I only charge 20 or 30,000 RMB for repair and materials. But I don't just do normal repairs. I use an Earl-type dimensional crystal fragment to repair it. Big brother, an Earl-type dimensional crystal fragment costs no less than 100,000. My 130,000 is the cheapest I can offer. I only included the materials. I didn't even include the repair fee." Chapter 362. This was troublesome. Iwenjun had asked the blacksmith to use an Earl-dimensional crystal to repair it. Compared to normal repairs, using a dimensional crystal was called a perfect repair. After a perfect repair, not only could the sword lady return to its original state, but it could also improve the quality of the sword lady. The attributes of the sword lady would be closer to the attributes of a natural sword lady. Therefore, many sword bearers liked to let the swordsmith place dimensional crystals into the sword lady when they repaired it. It wasn't unfair for the swordsmith to charge Iwenjun 130,000. It was indeed worth it. Obviously, the problem was Iwenjun himself. He knew he only had 50,000 renminbi, so why did he ask the blacksmith to use a dimensional crystal to repair it? "Mr. Iwenjun, is what this Mr. Sword Forger said true? Did you ask for the perfect repair?" Gohan asked Iwenjun. Of course he took the initiative. I even confirmed with him 3 times whether he was really going to use the dimensional crystal to repair it perfectly. The swordsmith immediately jumped out and said, "It was me." Iwenjun lowered her head. "Mr. Gohan, can you lend me 100,000 first? I will definitely return it to you in the future. I was the one who injured Liha. I want to give Liha a flawless body. I don't want her to be incomplete after she recovers. Mr. Gohan, please help me. Lend me 100,000 renminbi, and I'll pay you back." He didn't expect Iwenjun to have such an idea. Did he want him to pay for it? Thinking about this, Gohan could not help but feel annoyed. No wonder the E-clan would continue to decline. Every generation of the E-clan was this kind of person. It was like girls before the apocalypse. Their families were poor and they had no money, but they would still buy things on Taobao. After buying the things, she went to her boyfriend's side pitifully and forced her boyfriend to pay the bill. If it was really his girlfriend doing this, it would be fine. But Iwenjun was still a familiar stranger to Gohan. What was going on? However, Gohan had no choice but to pay for Iwenjun. Otherwise, the swordsmith wouldn't let Yi Wenjun go. The disciplinary committee might even arrest Yi Wenjun. Reneging on a debt was something the disciplinary committee would deal with. Of course, if Gohan asked Lu Lei to mediate, then there would be no problem. But only an idiot would ask Lu Lei to mediate. Asking a celestial tier sword wielder for a matter of 130,000 gold coins. Did he really think that Lu Lei was Gohan's father? There was less than half an hour left until the 2-hour meeting time. Gohan had been late the first time they met. If he was late again, who knew what punishment the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit would give Gohan? Helpless, Gohan had no other choice. He could only help Yi Wenjun pay the money. Okay, I'll lend it to you, but you have to sign this receipt for me. Gohan's expression was cold. He used his personal terminal to send an electronic version of the IOU to Yi Wenjun. This kind of electronic IOU was supervised by the highest level AI, which was the fragrant wind Tamono, and had undeniable legal efficiency. Thank you. Yi Wenjun received the electronic receipt and looked at it. Her expression immediately changed. She stood up and asked loudly, Mr. Gohan, what is the meaning of this? Are you trying to take advantage of me? That's right, I'm trying to take advantage of you. Gohan snorted. Although I, Gohan, helped you, it's because I respect Zetianjiendi. I don't want to see Zetianjiendi's descendants live like this. But I'm not a saint either. I'll be happy to clean up after you. You're wrong. Since I helped you into the car, then I can kick you out of the car. Yi Wenjun, think about it yourself. Gohan's tone was firm. He didn't allow Yi Wenjun to reject him. Yi Wenjun's thoughts were seen through by Gohan, and her expression immediately changed. There was anger, resentment, shame, and shame. Mr. Gohan, Yi Wenjun was wrong. Yi Wenjun will sign this receipt. Yi Wenjun bowed to Gohan and wrote her name on the electronic receipt. She made a copy and sent it to Gohan. The content of the receipt was simple. Today, I'm borrowing 100,000 RMB from Gohan. I'll pay you back 500,000 RMB in the future. After Yi Wenjun signed her name, the 100,000 RMB turned into a debt of 500,000 RMB. 400% interest. This was better than any loan shark. At least you have some backbone. You didn't completely ruin the Yi family's reputation. Gohan's face regained some warmth. I'm doing this to tell you that no one in this world owes you anything. You can't put your hopes on others. I didn't write a repayment date on this receipt. If you want, you can even pay me back 10,000 years later. So don't feel pressured. When you rebuild the Yi family, you'll realize that 500,000 RMB is nothing. It's just a string of numbers. I understand your good intentions. This matter was all Yi Wenjun's fault from beginning to end. Yi Wenjun will never forget your teachings. Yi Wenjun's words were full of sincerity. Look, this was the way he talked. He gave someone a loan of 400% interest, yet he still acted like a life mentor and made someone feel grateful for the rest of their life. TSK, impressive. After solving Yi Wenjun's problem, Gohan and Yi Wenjun returned to the bus on time. Song Yifei had already returned, so the bus started moving again. Yuyang Fortress was the outermost foothold under Yuzhang City's control. If there were roads between Yuzhang City and Yuyang Fortress, then there were no roads outside Yuyang Fortress. The national roads, county roads, towns, and villages that used to be bustling with people had all turned into forests that blocked out the sun. The hovercraft could not operate in such forests, and the hovercraft could only fly 10 meters above the ground at most. Many of the trees had grown to a height of 20 to 30 meters, and it was simply unrealistic to drive over the top of the forest. Fortunately, someone had already thought of a solution, which was to use the highway. The quality of the highway before the apocalypse wasn't that great, and it wasn't like Qingdao's sewers, which were filled with repair parts wrapped in oiled paper. However, reinforced concrete had a long lifespan. It had been 1,000 years since the apocalypse, but about 30% of the highway's concrete structure was still intact. Moreover, 70% of the roads had collapsed, and the large chunks of concrete on the ground wouldn't disappear naturally even after tens of thousands of years. Naturally, no trees could grow under them. Therefore, because of the existence of the highway network, there was still a concrete highway connecting all parts of China. Ordinary cars couldn't travel on such a highway, but it wasn't a problem for the hovercraft. As long as the road was clear and there weren't any trees suddenly blocking the road, the hovercraft could smoothly fly over the concrete ruins. It was even faster than when the highway was in good condition. Yuyang Fortress was built along Dongting Lake, and the Hangrui Highway passed by it before the apocalypse, crossing the Dongting River system. Guhan's hovercraft only needed to follow the shore of Dongting Lake all the way north to find the Hangrui Highway easily. 30 minutes after they set off, Guhan saw a concrete bridge crossing the water. 1,000 years had passed, but the bridge was still intact. There were no signs of it collapsing. The hovercraft took a turn and entered the Hangrui Highway. Next, they just needed to follow the Hangrui Highway westward and change to another highway at the hub of the highway to reach Gansu. According to the plan, if there were no problems along the way, they would arrive in Gansu in about 3 days. In other words, Guhan had to stay on the hovercraft for another 3 days. These 3 days were fine for Guhan. He only needed to meditate on the bed and clear his meridians. However, for Song Yifei it was more difficult. On the hovercraft, he could only maintain basic communication with the base city. All the network functions of his personal terminal couldn't be used, and Sword Maiden Online naturally couldn't be accessed. Song Yifei, who was in a hurry, didn't even have time to download a single movie or TV series. It was like a nerd who relied on his cell phone all day and suddenly found out that he had lost his cell phone and the internet. Then, he found himself on a train that had to travel for 3 days. Everyone could imagine how it felt. In short, Song Yifei was restless. He paced around Guhan and said all kinds of crazy things. Guhan could only pretend to be deaf. This situation lasted until the evening of the second day, when it was broken by an earth-shattering news. Yuyang Fortress has been breached. After ending the communication with the base city, the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit suddenly gathered everyone and announced the shocking news with a gloomy face. Chapter 363. Suddenly, Guhan and the others heard the shocking news. They had just been purchasing supplies in the fortress yesterday, and the scene was still playing in front of their eyes. It was as if they had just returned home from school, and 1 day later, their friends told them that their school had exploded. Of course, they would be happy to hear that their school had exploded, and they would at least be able to take a few weeks off. But when Guhan and the rest heard the news, it was not good at all. The entire carriage was in a state of panic. How could this be? How could this happen? Among all of them, Song Yifei was the most emotional. Yesterday, she had wandered around the small but safe place, but today, the place had been conquered and no longer existed. The second most emotional one was Ku Rock-in. When he heard the news, he looked very sad. He kept hitting the window with his fist, as if everything had happened because of him. If only I had been there. As long as I'm here, Yuyang Fortress will definitely be defended. It's all my fault, it's all my fault. Oh well, Jules Vren's Chunibyu was acting up again. However, on second thought, Ku Rock-in was actually a great person to be able to take responsibility for such things. I don't know the specific reason either. Yuzhang City is in a mess now. I talked to them for a few minutes, and they hung up on me. The sword spirit Eagle Cat's face was also gloomy. As a swordsman, he had spent most of his life in Yuyang Fortress. When he was young, he and his comrades had gone in and out of Yuyang Fortress time and time again to experience the battles there. In the entire carriage, the sword spirit Eagle Cat was the one who had the deepest feelings for Yuyang Fortress. He was the one who felt the most pain in the carriage. Although I don't know the specific situation in Yeyang Fortress, Sword Immortal Cloudy Sky has given the order. Our destination remains the same, and we will still go to Chongyang Mountain. From now on, all of you must be on high alert. This world is going to be chaotic again. The eagle cat let out a sad sigh and walked back to his room. Looking at his back, he seemed to have aged by more than 10 years. At the moment, Yuzhong City was indeed in chaos. Whether it was the institutions under the council or the departments under the Sword Committee, they were all in a mess. Everyone was running around to deal with the chain reaction caused by the news of the fall of Yeyang Fortress. Even the air in Yuzhong City was filled with the smell of solidification. The news of the fall of Fort Yuyang could not be hidden from the commoners. Only a few hours later than the officials, this explosive news had already reached the ears of everyone in Yuzhong City. Yanjing City and the other 7 cities had also received the news. Fortunately, this was not the first time Yuyang Fort had fallen. Before this, Yuyang Fort had already fallen more than 30 times. Some of the older people could still remember the last time Yuyang Fort had fallen. The fall of the Yeyang Fortress did not mean that Yuzhong City would fall as well. Therefore, the entire Yuzhong City remained relatively calm when they received the news. Sword Committee, Conference Room 1. Lu Lei and Zhu Wudao sat in the main seats of the conference room. On either side of them were the people in charge of the Sword Committee and the Council. Keep your spirits up, don't act like your mother just died. When I was young, Yuyang Fort had already fallen into enemy hands twice. One time I was inside Yuyang Fort. Am I not still alive to see you all now? Calm down and tell me what happened in Fort Yuyang. Lu Lei could not help but knock on the table when he saw the silence in the conference room. He had experienced the fall of Fort Yuyang twice in his life. This was the 3rd time. Where are the people from the Sword Committee and the Rescue Department? Come and report to me first. What's the situation with the sword bearers in Fort Yuyang? Have they all been rescued? Lu Lei ordered. A middle-aged man sitting on the right side of the table stood up and reported. Reporting to Lord Pavilion Master, according to our investigation, there were a total of 587 sword-bearers in the Fort Yuyang. Among them, there were 300 Fort Yuyang guards and 287 sword-bearers who were adventurers. There were 3 spiritual sword-bearers, 34 famed sword-bearers, 150 treasured sword-bearers, and 400 ancient sword-bearers. 421 of them returned to Yuzhong City safely. 51 were sacrificed, and 115 are missing. I'm afraid they're already dead. The person in charge had tears in his eyes when he mentioned the number of casualties. Those who had died were not ordinary people. They were all precious sword-bearers. What are you crying for? What are you crying for? Zhu Wudao slammed the table. Didn't more than 400 people return? This is already the best result in history. I still remember the last time when Fort Yuyang fell, only a little more than 100 out of the 800 sword-bearers returned. All 700 of them died there. Compared to the last time, this time is already very lucky. What are you guys crying for? Pull yourself together. Yes, Pavilion Master. Everyone shouted in unison. The atmosphere eased up a lot. But it's strange. Why did so many people return this time? Lu Lei didn't understand. He was one of the 100 lucky survivors who managed to escape from the Yuyang Fort the last time. Lu Lei clearly remembered that he had been through a lot. He had encountered 4 or 5 near-death situations before he was lucky enough to escape back to Yuzhong City. The defense of Fort Yuyang was one of the most tragic battles in Lu Lei's life. Most of the sword-bearers had died on the wall. Dozens or even hundreds of Yuan Ko had surrounded the defending sword-bearers. Many of them had not lasted more than 3 minutes before their blood stained the battlefield, never to return. In Lu Lei's memory, more than 400 of the 500 people had returned. This was simply impossible. This is all thanks to the quantum teleportation circle. the minister replied. The quantum teleportation circle we built at Fort Yuyang 10 years ago has made a great contribution. All the sword bearers don't have to break out of the city like before. They only need to gather together and guard the teleportation circle. Then they can return to Yuzhang City. That's why we were able to withdraw so many survivors. I see. Lu Lei nodded. He had forgotten about the quantum teleportation circle. With it, their chances of survival would be greatly increased. What about the civilians? What about the civilians in the fort? Zhu Wudao turned to the council staff on his left. According to incomplete statistics, there were more than 3,000 civilians in Fort Yuyang at that time. Less than 300 of them returned, the council staff said with grief and indignation. 4/5 of the 500 sword bearers had returned, but only 10% of the civilians had made it back. That's good. 300 managed to escape. Last time, the number of civilians was only in the single digit. Lu Lei didn't care at all. It didn't matter that thousands of civilians had died. Those civilians were all adult. 99% of them could never become sword bearers again. It didn't matter if they died. It wouldn't affect the future of mankind much. The council should settle the civilians who escape. Arrange for people to comfort them. If the civilians who died were employees of the Sword Committee or the council, compensate them according to the employment agreement. If you went there to do business on your own, then, according to the humanitarian rules, you have to compensate them symbolically. Just like that, Lu Lei and Zhu Wudao finalized the settlement of the civilians. These were the simplest things. The most difficult thing was the settlement of the sword bearers and the compensation work. This involved a large amount of money and resources. Also, what about the beacon towers? What's the situation there? Zhu Wudao put the problem on the beacon towers. The safety of the sword bearers was also a big problem. A total of 32 beacon towers were affected by the attack. Most of them escaped into the fort. 6 sword bearers didn't make it back. They're probably dead. The rest of the sword bearers who escaped into the fort are included in the list, the minister in charge of the beacon towers replied. What about those Yuankos? What movements did they make after taking over Fort Yuyang? Did they try to attack Yuzhang City? This was also something that Lu Lei and Zhu Wudao were very concerned about. According to historical records, after the Yeyang fortress was conquered, there was a 50% chance that these Yuanzhans would attack Yuzhang City in an attempt to conquer the entire Yuzhang City. No. According to the report of the sword bearers who are still guarding the beacon towers, there was no movement after Yuan Ko took over Yuzhang Fort. After we lost hundreds of surveillance drones, we found that all of the Yuan Kos were gathered in Yuyang Fort. They didn't leave. They didn't leave after taking over the fort. Lu Lei's expression changed. This wasn't good news. It meant that Yuan Kos were gathering more power. Once they finished gathering their power, Yuzhang City would be attacked. What about the Eagle Cat's sword spirit? Zhu Wudao asked casually. I remember that he went to Yuyang Fort for a mission. Our communication department has contacted the Eagle Cat's sword spirit. They didn't stay in Yuyang Fort yesterday. They're about to leave Hunan Province, the person in charge of the communication department reported. Oh, that's good. The Eagle Cat's sword spirit is the backbone of Yuzhang City. We can't afford to lose any sword spirit sword bearers. Zhu Wudao's expression completely relaxed. As long as Ku Rakin was fine, he had nothing to worry about. By the way, the Eagle Cat's sword spirit also asked us if we should let him come back to protect Yuzhang City. Tell the Eagle Cat's sword spirit that he wants to continue his mission. Yuzhang City doesn't need him back. His mission is the most important. Zhu Wudao said firmly. Your Excellency, you haven't recovered yet. You can't go in. At this moment, a loud noise came from the door. Then, a strong man, dripping wet and bleeding from various wounds, rushed into the meeting room. This man was the 100-fold sword spirit. He was responsible for the safety of Yuyang Fort, You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.